Oh, 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 that camera's the one I want. That's the camera I want. G'day guys, how you doing? We've had a couple of little mini tiny hiccups this morning already. Wrong camera just then. And obviously the wrong camera as I went straight in this morning as well, but that's okay. Looks like we got a couple of new people with us as well. Welcome. Hopefully you enjoy the show. We do this Tuesday, Thursdays at this same time slot, live to YouTube. Interviews, chats with other photographers and Photoshop and all sorts of things photography if you're interested in photography. All right. Oh, one huge bit of news personally or for the channel. Yesterday or maybe the day before we hit 10,000. Woo! I don't know whether that's a big thing or not. It's big for me. Seems like it's taken me, well, it has taken me 4 or 5 years to get there. All right, just double checking everything's working here. Yes, it is. Let me know in the stream there, in the live chat, whether you can hear me loud and clear now. You should be able to hear me loud and clear. We've got William Patino with us today, an incredible photographer, one of my favorite photographers. I've been following William for about, I think I met him about 3 or 4 years ago, but I've been following him for probably 6 or 7 years. I love his photography. It's got a real, you guys know that I love romantic, dramatic landscape photography, and William just is able to produce that style of photography absolutely brilliantly. He has a real talent in capturing, the drama and the essence of the locations that he visits. Incredible photographer. Past clients, I had a look on his bio, past clients, Tourism Australia, and a whole bunch of other tourism stuff as well. We might chat about that today. Subway, of all things, as well, has been a past client. Flight Centre, Australian Geographic, originally from Wollongong, now in NZ, over the ditch in New Zealand, capturing those incredible landscapes over there. One other thing before we jump over and introduce William, down in the description below, there's a couple of things to thank Will for being on today. Jump over, follow him on Instagram, like him on Facebook, but he's also got these incredible, actually, and I've actually been privileged enough to watch his education. He's got these incredible landscape photography tutorials where he took a professional photographer with him, I believe, videographer with him, and he took us all on a shoot. He takes us on a shoot to his favorite locations and describes all the thought processes that he's going through, and then comes back and runs through the edit process. So it's a real holistic style landscape photography tutorial, all the way from composition and setup right through to the editing process. Absolutely incredible. Have a look below. There's a link and a coupon code down there for you guys as well. All right, let's jump in and say g'day to William Patino. Here we go, mate. I actually haven't turned you on yet. You're on now. How are you, mate?
Hey, buddy. I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Mate, absolutely, absolutely. Mate, I think we met. Do you remember when we met? We met down at Bombo, middle of the night. You were doing a Astro shoot. I was there with Luke
Yes,
Sharkey and
I remember. Yeah, that's right.
Dylan.
Dylan, Luke, and I think it was just yourself. I think.
Yeah, and you had a couple of workshops going on, or a couple of
Yes.
people on a workshop. So I
Yeah,
met you
that
down
was.
there, and I thought, geez, you were such a good bloke, and the guys were raving about your photography, and I was already following you, I think. But, mate, I love your work, and tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into your photos.
Oh, mate, what do I say? It's
On
just
the
funny
spot.
when I met you there. I'm having the memory now, and yeah, I remember seeing the flashlights coming over in the dark, and yeah, it's just funny trying to shake people's hands and introduce yourself in the in the pitch black, basically, and the
Absolutely.
headlamps, blinding everybody. But that was an old workshop I used to do in Australia. That was the first ever group workshop I'd created and ran. It's called Sunset to Stars. So we'd shoot the sunset at Cathedral and then shoot the Astro there at Bombo Quarry. But yeah, anyway, mate, about me, like you said, from Wollongong originally, and yeah, just picked up the camera as a hobby, as you do, like most people, and completely fell in love with it. And yeah, it made it just it changed the way that it changed my life. It really did, and I can say that without it being an exaggeration, because I went from being a tradesman. I was suffering mental health, had depression at the time when I picked up a camera, and then to go full swing and really just get a different outlook on life, to change my career to be a full-time photographer, to then leave Australia to move here to New Zealand, all because of photography, essentially.
Yeah.
I just can't believe when I look at my life how drastic it's all changed. And I never thought I'd be one of those people that got to say they do what they love for a living. I remember hearing those stories, those people, and like, kind of, you think, listen to this jerk, get to do what they love for a living. And then now I happen to be one of those clowns. So I'm just so grateful, mate. But purely for photography itself, it is just such a good hobby, even if it never becomes a career, who cares about that?
Yeah.
Just the way it helps you appreciate the world and nature and just slow down and view things differently. For that, I'm forever indebted to the camera and the way that it's helped me to just live a more wholesome lifestyle, I think. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah,
I guess
mate.
that's about me.
A beautiful thing. A couple of interesting points I want to touch on there. The first, well, yeah, the first one. I think we'll go with that. The first one. I don't know if this is the same for you, but there's some parallels between myself and yourself. I was a tradie as well, and had some mental health stuff going on as well, and then switched over to photography, and I find it much more fulfilling and much more enjoyable, and much less draining than what being a tradie was. But the interesting thing is, and that's what I wanted to check with you as well. I probably work twice as hard now than what I did before, but I enjoy it so much that it's not hard work as such. Is that the same for you? Are you kind of working a little bit harder and a little bit more hours maybe than what you were
Mate,
before?
not twice as hard, probably three times as hard. Uh, Look, I was pretty comfortable as a tradesman, and I think that led to a little bit of the mental health issues I had. I just figured out how to go to work, do the bare minimum, and just push repeat, and just cruise through life like that. And pretty had a bit of a bad work ethic, really. Just kind of just I worked for a big company, and the mentality was, when you work for big companies, it's easy to get jaded by the
Yeah,
way things are ran. So yeah, I was early 20s, mid 20s with a pretty poor work ethic, just trying to get the paycheck and move on. And then now to be running my own business is, yeah, just hit the ground running. And I started doing this full time when my son was born. He was born over 5 years ago now. I literally quit my trade when he was 3 months old. So
okay.
life just changed so much from being stable career. My wife was working full time as well. So it was double income, no kids, to now being single income, 2 kids, running your own business, sole provider for the family. It's like, you probably wouldn't really wish that upon your worst enemy, but no, of course not. It's look, I just feel so much more fulfilled, like you said, to be able to do this. And yeah, okay, you got to work hard, and it's hard to switch off sometimes, and there's aspects of the business that are not always enjoyable to deal with, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, because I find it more rewarding to
Yeah.
be working for myself and just teaching in general and whatnot. It's incredibly rewarding for sure. So yeah, you got to work harder, but I think the rewards are much greater as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the hardest for me, it was probably for you as well, was that transition period when you've jumped off the old job, doing it pretty comfortable, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to make some money doing landscape photography, and just trying to figure out how to replace that, whatever it happened to be, the money that you need to pay all the bills that you used to get pretty easy through building. That
Yeah,
that took a while, didn't it? Did that take a while for you too?
yeah, really was a leap of faith. So what happened with me, mate? I was an early adopter of Instagram, and that helped me garnish a bit of a following on Insta. I jumped on there around 2011, just organically, just happened to get on there, and that is how I was really introduced to photography in general. And what happened, maybe a year down the line, I had, just a few thousand followers, maybe up to 10,000 followers. But at that point in time, around, say, 2012, you could count on one hand how many other Australians actually had 10,000 followers, for argument's sake. So what was happening, I started to get picked up by a few other photographers. Lauren Bath, who's an
Ah, yeah,
Australian
yeah,
like influencer.
yep.
Yeah, so I made friends with her, and then she was getting offers to do essentially influencer.
Hmm.
That term now has changed a bit, but it was more or less coined at this exact time. We remember like being at the forefront of that term being used, and we were essentially being offered to fly to destinations around Australia, and I went to Canada, and more or less take photos, post it on Instagram of that destination, and just tag the tourism board. And,
Yeah,
so, and basically, instead of a tourism company paying 100 grand for a billboard on a highway, we can pay these photographers, all expenses paid, to come over, give them a few bucks to post photos. So for me, I started making a little bit of income like that initially. So when it became time, by the time I eventually quit to do this full time, I was doing a little bit of that type of tourism stuff, but teaching was really my passion as well. And I realized that I couldn't start running the longer workshops that I wanted to do unless I quit my
Yeah.
trade, essentially. So there was that period like, okay, I might be able to do this full time, but I don't know until I create the workshops and offer them. But I can't create them and offer them until I quit my job. So it's just like, all right, let's see what happens. Hopefully, I can do a few of these tourism influencer jobs in the meantime to make up for, until the workshops can run. And then that's essentially how it all started off. But yeah, it was a little bit. I wasn't really scared or nervous. I think I was determined to show that I could make it work. And
Yeah.
I felt a bit of pressure just from, I don't know, family members and former mates that I worked with. You got a brand new baby and now you're going to go and do this photography thing. Like, it just seems crazy when you look at it from the outside, and I
Yeah.
totally get it.
Yeah.
What was funny though with me was I had my workmates saying for years, when are you going to do this full time? Because I had a wallpaper on the Yosemite operating system on Apple, and I was doing these tourism jobs every now and then. I'd take annual leave, go to Canada for 5 days, come back. And I'd say, oh, when are you going to do photography full time? Thinking I was about to walk out the door. And I would always say, nah, no way. You can't live off this full time. I'm not interested. And I genuinely meant it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my son was born, that's when my mindset changed. And I was like, you know what? I want to be able to see him when I want to see him. And yeah, I know it kind of became selfish, I guess, because I didn't like that maybe I was going to be working late one night and now I can't get home and see my newborn son, and just things like that. There was a few things changing at work, and that helped me go, you know what, maybe I can do this full time. Maybe it is possible. So I went from probably 4 years of saying, nah, not interested, no way, not going to happen, to then suddenly saying, maybe I will. And then I think it was a week later, I quit and then started doing it. So yeah, it wasn't like a long-term plan. And I just, one last thing I'll say on that is, I think that really helped my growth as a photographer, is that there was no motive or ambition to make any money at all from photography. The motive and ambition was to be a better photographer, to do justice to what I was seeing and experiencing. I didn't pick a camera up like people do these days and say, all right, I'm going to gain a following, I'm going to get paid to travel, blah, blah. That just taints your growth and
Yeah.
your vision,
Yeah.
your creativity. For me, mate, I just, like I said, because it set me free and gave me a new outlook on life, I just loved it and I wanted to give it my everything. And I just think that helped me organically grow and become essentially who I am today. And I didn't have that overriding thought of, how am I going to monetize this? How am I going to sell something? And that's a hard one now, because the industry and social media has changed over the years, that people have seen the value in it all. And people can't help but think, oh, maybe I could try this or try that. But with me, it just wasn't a thought, because it was not an option. And I think that just really helped me a lot.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it's interesting you would say that. I often talk about those kind of things, particularly social media these days, that you can, and I do warn of this or mention this often at my workshops, is the fact that, you pick up a camera, and back in my day, much like yourself, I pick up a camera. There wasn't really much social media. Flickr was kind of a thing, but just emerging. There was no Instagram or Facebook back when I sound like I'm an old fart here talking about the old days, don't we? A couple of
The
old
good old
farts,
days.
mate. But back then you were allowed to grow, and you were allowed, and without the influence. What I often say is, you have the influences on Instagram, but actually the entire organism that is social media has more of an influence on the influencers than the other way around. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you all of a sudden you take some pretty photos, and you might get 20 likes for one particular style of photo, and then you put up something else and you get 100 likes, and you think, oh, this is it, this is the one I've been looking for. So
Yeah.
then
And
all of
how
a
could that
sudden,
not, yeah, how could that not
yeah,
influence someone's creative process? Because they're going to go, well, hang on, that one got more, so maybe I should do more of that. And now, instead of them creating freely from the heart,
yeah,
they go down the road of trying to please an audience. I
absolutely,
think it's like, sorry to cut you off, but yeah, it's like the radio, mate. You can turn on the radio and you've got the pop music, which has a set formula to do a set thing. It's all
yes,
very repetitive. and then you can find the underground, the stuff that no one's ever heard of, but it's got much more substance to it. And I think that's how photography is now. We're always going to have that pop photography, which at the moment in the last few years, it's kind of been, the small person in the landscape, the blown out skies, that type of thing, for
Yeah, I know
example,
what you mean. Yeah.
adventure type, whatever. And that's just easy to turn over, easy to shoot, works on a little screen. And then you've got all your other genres under there. And yeah, it's hard for people now to not feel some kind of pressure or that they should go down a certain track, because the general public, mate, the people that follow us online, 90% of them, they're not photographers, they're not artists, that they just see something, they go, oh, that looks pretty, and they like it. And it's hard for the creator to not read into that more than they probably should. It's you're right. The influence is the platform itself, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it tends to sort of guide and funnel a lot of the photographers down a certain pathway to produce a certain trendy or trending look. Something that's very
Yeah.
appealing to the masses, if you like.
And on that note, I've got two Instagram accounts now, and that original one I was telling you about, the one that I started on, that's got way more followers. But the reason why I started a new account, and that's all I really use, is my original one was, it was my whole photography journey of the types of shots I do now, but then it would have the occasional travel tourism, blue sky Fiji shot, and it was just my growth essentially, and a few of the human element, just me dabbling and trying stuff out. And then I reached a point maybe 2 years ago where I was like, you know what, I know what I want to be and what I want to do, and I just felt like I wanted a fresh start to move on. And yeah, so I just thought I'd mention that there, because if someone searched me on Instagram, they'd see these two accounts. And people say, why are you using one with 60,000 followers and not 160?
Oh wow, yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I just for me, I saw the road I could have went down. I could have easily, I know what photos make good likes and what tourism people want and whatever, but I was selling myself out, and I always kind of said I'd rather become a tradesman again or whatever and make the photos that I want to
Mm.
make than sell out. It's, once again, it's like music. It's like a band. Do we write this album because that's what the radio people want? Or do we write one from the heart, which, okay, maybe doesn't sell as much or get as many views and likes, but at least you're going to be more fulfilled. And
Yeah.
and I guess I encourage people to do that same thing. Just do what you want to do, and don't try not to get caught up in what's trendy or popular. And it's very hard because you've got these numbers flashing in front of you, like you've got this many likes,
It
this blah blah blah.
encourages
But
you. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
You check
it's
the
a hard one,
likes,
mate.
check the comments.
Mm,
I think we need to be a little bit careful because when I think back and when I see a lot of newcomers to photography these days, part of the photography timeline, at least for myself, was to please the audience at a certain, for a couple of years, the early years, if you like. I was all about that, and it's part of me learning to use the camera and me learning
yeah,
to capture that kind of style of things. But I think as soon as you start losing the passion and the mojo for doing that, that's kind of your creative conscience, if you like, saying, hey, well, this is great, but now give me something more, give me something deeper, give me something more authentic, give me some more of yourself, and let's take this to the next level. So I think for anyone out there thinking, oh, but I love doing this and that, and and I'm just new, and I like getting the likes, that's absolutely okay. But as soon
yeah.
as you lose the passion, then that's a trigger to start questioning yourself. How can I take this further? How can I make this, include more of myself in my photography at that point?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's part of the journey. If you pick
Yeah.
up an instrument, you don't pick up a guitar and start playing your own tunes. You learn the covers, you do the smoke on the waters and all that
Absolutely.
type of thing. And then you might get to a point where you say, I'm going to go this direction, or you continue down, making a certain style. That's whatever. And that's the beauty of, I'm just going to call it art in general, all the creative outlets, is that there's no right or wrong. And I've always said that to people that I've had on workshops, I can help you take whatever photo you want. If it's something that I don't do personally, I don't care. It doesn't matter, because you can do whatever you want. There's no
Yeah.
rules,
Yeah.
as long as you're having fun. It's such a cliche thing, but I always say that to people: just have fun and whatever. It doesn't, there's no worries, there's no need to get too caught up and make this too serious. You just do what you do, and that's the main thing. Stay true to yourself, essentially, for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in actual fact, a lot of people come to me and ask, Adam, I haven't found my style yet. And I heard it. I'm going to put myself in the, embarrass myself here and tell you all I was watching The Voice the other night, but
Oh.
it's quite I enjoy it. Give me a break. But they put it really well. I can't remember who said it, which one of the hosts there, the judges said it, but they said basically, they want to hear more. They want to hear more of your background, your passion, your emotion in the music. And they put it really well. They said, you'll be influenced. Get out there and be influenced by as many artists as you can. And in our case, be influenced by as many photographers or painters or whatever it might be. And then what you'll end up doing is you'll end up mixing them all together and then pulling out all the bits that you like and mixing a bit of your own self and emotion with that. And that's how you find your own style, by taking little bits from all your influences, mixing it with yourself, and you develop your own style that way. Now, where I think the problem can be is if you only have Instagram, the popular style of Instagram, as your main influence, then of course you're going to end up producing that exact same style that everyone else is producing. But if you have a look around and have a look at different artists and different
Mm.
genres and different painters, and take a little bit from here and a little bit from there. Myself, I started off influence from Ken Duncan, and he was the only influence in the beginning, and so I started emulating him to a certain degree. But then I discovered Peter Eastway and Christian Fletcher and Tony Hewitt, and then I started looking at some weird and wild photography and the blurry stuff and the dark stuff. Andy Lee, do you know Andy Lee? I think he's from,
Yeah, I've heard the name,
yeah,
but I don't know him. Yeah.
he's got a lot of Iceland photography. I think he's from the UK himself. Really dark, does a lot of infrared stuff. And I
Yeah.
started
So you got to,
mixing that all in.
yeah, you
Yeah,
got to
absolutely.
vary your source of the
Yeah,
inspiration. Yeah, you can't just jump on the same platform and expect to see different things all the time. Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
Vary it around. All right, mate.
Mm.
How about we could be here all day chit chatting away, but
Yeah.
I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. But
Yeah.
let's have a look at some of your incredible work. Share your screen up, and we'll
Thanks.
go from
Yeah,
there, mate.
cool. I've started off with. I just thought I'd start off with the oldest image in my portfolio, just because it means something to me. This one here. So I hope no one tunes in now and thinks this is one of my.
It's a great photo, mate. What are you talking about?
Oh. So we'll start off with one old one, and then the rest are all kind of varied. But the reason why I'm bringing this one up, it was the first time that I kind of had a preconceived idea and then went and achieved it. So this is 2012 when I captured this. And I lived not far from here at Windang, down on the south coast there, Illawarra.
Hmm.
I used to drive past this tree all the time as a child. And then when I picked a camera up, no, before I picked the camera up, I always thought, oh, that would make a good painting or something, because my mum was an oil painter and my
Sure.
grandfather. It's always been just in the family, just painting in general. And I always thought that tree would make a good painting. Not that I even did painting anyway. And when I picked the camera up and was dabbling in photography, a few months later, I thought, I'm going to go and get a shot of that tree. And sure enough, I come down here, and to be honest, I pretty much winged it as far as the sun star, the shadows as leading lines. None of that was planned or anything,
Wow.
but it was just cool to have that idea, and then a few days later or whatever it was, plonk down the camera, and then bang, it's now materialized into a living thing.
Yeah.
It started in my head, and then now I created it. So yeah, this one will always be special to me, and I keep it on the website to this very day, purely because of that. And it's been funny and cool to see this become a photography location over the years. Every now and then I'll just happen to see a shot of this tree pop up that yeah, at the time I remember shooting it and getting bombarded with where's
Yeah.
this tree and everything. And yeah, it just meant something to me, because it was like the local 10 minutes down the road, and got that shot. But yeah,
It
so
actually,
very simple.
it actually a couple of years after that, or maybe even 4 or 5 years after that, became a real thing on Instagram. The backlit sun star through a silhouetted tree with the leading lines was massive on Instagram for a while there, just before Astro sort of burst on the screen. I think it was this
uh,
single tree with a sun star.
yeah, that's
Maybe
it.
you
Just
started it, Will.
no, I wouldn't go that far, mate. Wouldn't go that far. Maybe, yeah, who knows? I was probably influenced by someone else, but I definitely did not. I don't even know if I knew how to shoot sunstars. This was on a Canon 550D with I don't know if I still had the twin lens, like the 18 to 55, like the plastic lens that
Yeah,
comes with the camera.
yeah.
I might have grabbed the 17 to 40 by this stage, the Canon 17 to 40, but yeah, all I knew is I didn't really know what I was doing consciously anyway. Subconsciously think, some people just do the framing or whatever, but yeah, so just a fond memory. And it's funny, I went back a few years later and I reshot this tree with my wife and son holding hands under it, looking at the sunset. And that's a canvas in our house
Oh, nice.
at the moment, just because it was kind of going full circle. Now I've got a family and,
Yeah.
putting the family there and everything like that. So anyway, that's this old photo here. It's
And
funny because I remember doing the edit and, mate, I wasn't even using, who knows what I was using back then, something called paint.net, a free, and I was just
awesome.
mucking around and got the sepia
That's
somehow. And
bloody
I was
good.
like, wow. And I'm looking now at the foreground where it's like, it doesn't even, it's just lost its color down there, the sepia
There's
filter,
something
who
going on
knows?
there, yeah, but
But it's good. It's always good to look back and you see that progression over the years anyway. So I'll move on to it. I'll get off this one because I don't
that's
like
all right.
sitting on that for too
And
long.
roughly, mate, how long? When did you first pick up the camera? When did you get that Canon?
Late, we got the camera, say 2011, because we went to Europe and we
Okay.
thought, but I didn't invest in the photography as a hobby until very late 2011. So then this was shot, 6 months later type thing. Yeah, so I guess you could say I've been in photography for 8.5, 9 years,
Yeah.
basically. And look, the rest of these photos now that I scroll along, there's no order, there's nothing. I've just picked photos that for me just, with the photography that I do, I'm very fortunate in the sense that I'm not shooting for any brands, or I don't really do much stuff for anyone but myself really with the
Yeah.
camera. So every photo that I take and share, it's always what I call a portfolio shot. There's just no other reason. I'll go out and shoot all the time, but then every few months I'll get a handful of images and that's the new work that I release. So every photo I share will always mean something to me for one reason or another. But this bunch here that I've just got in Photoshop today for you guys is just ones that maybe meant a little bit more for one
Yeah.
reason or the
Yeah.
other. So this one here, Torre, Patagonia,
Beautiful.
most people would probably recognize it. Now, the reason why this shot is just significant to me personally is because I'd been to Patagonia twice prior to this photo. And on those two trips, I still hadn't seen Torre because it was covered in cloud.
Right. Oh,
Yeah, so
yeah.
I did a solo trip there a few years back and did some scouting with the plan on returning to run workshops. Did Argentina and Chile, 10-day solo trip. Then when I returned the next year to do a workshop, we got awesome conditions in Chile, but at the start of the trip here in Argentina, we just got the worst storm in like 10 years. And there was me, Mark Adamus, Colby Brown, all these other professionals there running workshops, and we're all in the same position, basically trapped indoors while this 10-day storm just obliterated the region and you couldn't even see a single mountain. So it wasn't until last year, so this is 2019 when I captured this one, I had the workshop as well again, but I gave myself 3 days before the workshop kicked off to try and do some personal shooting and to just be here. This is early morning, about an hour after sunrise, and just to get the fall colors finally and to see Torre with the light, it was just like, mate, I just never forget. And just being here alone, there's no one else around for, 5 kilometers or whatever. And just a real special moment in time, just to finally look at this mountain. Like, I've been waiting years to see you, and now we've got this
Yeah.
one-on-one. And when I had a good sunrise here too, red sky and everything, but I just like this photo, just obviously the variety of the colors and
Yeah. And the
for me,
light, beautiful
just
light.
that moment where I can see this amazing, the vertical relief on this thing is just incredible. It's hard to do it justice through a single shot.
Yeah. Yeah. With that, with the image, couple of quick questions.
Mm,
As again, thinking back to early days in my photography, processing wise, I'd be inclined to really crank the contrast up and sort of punch the contrast up in the background as well. And I notice here that you've got a nice level of contrast in the foreground, and then as we start moving back, it's sort of less and less contrast, and then we got that beautiful warm light on the peak, which really pulls you in.
mm.
Is that something you're conscious of, the way you're using contrast in this image to
Yeah.
maintain depth?
Yeah, you'll see that. Thanks for noticing. You'll probably see that through every image that I show you is that I go from high contrast to low contrast. And the reason is that's how nature works. You walk outside now and look at something in the distance, it's desaturated and the blacks are much
Yeah.
brighter. There's not as much contrast. when we take a photo, you have that raw file, which is not a true representation of what you saw anyway. When you get it in the computer, and my early processing was just big global adjustments where, add contrast, the whole thing would get contrast, add texture and clarity, everything gets it. And the problem with that is if you're adding that contrast and texture and detail to whatever's far in the background, you're removing that sense of distance. There's no longer that sense of depth anymore. And you look at any of the painters, the master landscape painters, modern, whoever, if they're going to do it, pull up Bob Ross, the Afro guy. Whatever's in the background, mate, gets a few big strokes of the brush like that, and then that's it. It's the foreground where the thin brush comes out and we get the detail. And that's because it helps create that sense and illusion of distance. So I've tried to employ that similar approach to my post-processing of I add haze in the background because that softens it up a little bit. Now the foreground pops and the eye will flow, and there's just this sense of depth going on. And some images will show that better than others, of course, depending on the location and the composition and everything. But 100%, it's a conscious decision to haze out. It goes against your intuition. Most people, when I do a workshop, they're like, "What do you mean?" I mentioned the dehaze tool, and they're like, "Yeah, it's awesome," and they crank it into plus, and I'm like, "No, I go in the negative. I add haze back there, and then." It creates an illusion of making other things look sharper. If you have a forest scene and you dehaze the background, but not other tree trunks, now they look really sharp. And people will say, "Oh, what's your sharpening trick?" I'm like, none. I actually soften, and now they look sharper because everything else has been softened.
Absolutely.
Funny how the eye kind of works and flows like that. So, that was the decision with this one. And I think this was a single exposure. I didn't focus stack. It was just around 30 mil, I think, just going bang, and quite a simple shot, really. What's funny though is, modern cameras, how you can just do this as a single exposure and pull up the details.
Absolutely.
Whereas I'm reflecting back on the early photography I did, the dynamic range, you just couldn't do it. If you tried to pull up the shadows, there was just banding and noise. And man, photography with the dynamic range we have in most cameras now, it's made my life so much easier to just be able to shoot. It might not look good on the back of the camera because you're exposing for the highlights, but that you've captured that detail in the shadows to bring it out later on. And it just makes the creative process a bit more organic to just walk out there, frame it up, get in the rhythm, and not have to worry about too much of the technical side of things too much anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Just on that dehaze filter, when it came out, I thought the same. I was kind of thinking, this is a dangerous tool because contrast is so addictive. And the way the dehaze adds contrast to the low contrast areas,
Yes.
like the mountain range in the background, it really makes everything look awesome. But when everything's awesome, then everything becomes the same level of,
It's a bit grungy then, and it just doesn't. Oh no, it just doesn't have that same look that I personally like in my photos. I like a more painterly type look, I guess you could say, and this is one way that I can achieve that anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, for anyone at home, actually, that's one of the big tips is often people will say, I really love that painterly effect. How do you achieve that painterly effect? Well, it's not actually a filter as such. It's the way you layer the contrast and layer the color and layer the brightness throughout the image that really gives this sort of painterly style to it.
And that simplifies the answer, doesn't it? It's the contrast starting heavy and fading into the scene. If you're going to simplify it, so a higher contrast foreground, and then it fades off. And like I said, if you walked outside now, if you have the privilege of being able to look in the distance at some hills or whatever, you'll go, oh, okay, yeah, the mountains aren't black. They're almost a blue. The blacks are so much brighter that they're just a faded grey blue. And then you look down at your feet in the grass and there's 100% blacks, like right in there. So it's just a way to try and maintain that natural integrity and look of the scene. And look, not that for me, it's not about, I'm trying to maintain reality. Like that doesn't bother me too much. It's more, I just like the way that it allows the eye to flow through and just has that type of, painterly type look that I enjoy in visual arts.
I love it as well, mate. It's stunning. All right, beautiful, mate.
All right, get off that one, eh? This one here, look, this is a simple image. It's pretty old, 2014, I think. I put this one in here mainly because of the memory. running a workshop in the Canadian Rockies, and we had one afternoon where it was pretty miserable, rainy. We're about half an hour out from sunset, and there's a few bears off in a field about 5-minute drive from this location. And the guys are photographing the bears, and there was a bear kind of lurking around some deer or something from memory. And anyway, it was getting to the point where it's like, is this sunset going to happen or not? It doesn't look very likely. And so I kind of let the guys just enjoy the wildlife, let's not worry about trying to get here for sunset. And then you've probably encountered this. You just see one little cloud the whole cloud was the whole sky was overcast, but there was one cloud that I could just see the slightest tint of warmth.
Oh, yeah.
It almost looked like the white balance was just upped a little bit on one. And I thought, there's a big gap on the horizon. This is about to explode. Yeah. So I was like, quick, guys, jump in. We're going. And I remember driving safely, but quite fast, flying to this spot. And I said to everyone, there's going to be a rainbow in a minute. There's going to be a rainbow, because it was all rain cloud out to this direction. And then off to the right where the sun was, it was just starting to get turned to fire. And then sure enough, as I said the sentence, one of the passengers, one of the girls was like, there it is, there's a rainbow. Yeah. So we just jumped here, and everyone just had to go silly. And it was pretty stressful because I wanted to photograph it, but then I wanted to make sure all the clients obviously are comfortable and getting the shot. And some people didn't have the wide enough lens, to get the whole thing in. And it was just like madness. And that's not how I like to kind of do things, but it just happened. You got to be reactionary with landscape photography. So it was just more the memory here of going, man, like to get the rainbow over Mount Rundle here in Banff. This is just like a real iconic photo location. And all I do is look back and go, I wish I got a better foreground or this and that. But like I said, the main priority was trying to make sure everyone else was doing what they had to do to get a nice photo. But
did it last long? Because these can last for anywhere between 20 or 30 seconds to 5 or 7 minutes.
Look, we probably had a good 3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, it's not too bad.
But there was really a real good time around now where the light was also hitting the mountain, and it was just really going orange. And the files were really hard to process because it was so orange. Everything was orange and magenta, and the way the camera just picked up the colors because it was so vibrant, it was insane. And we even had the full reflection in the water here as well, so you could get the bow going all the way down. And it was pretty awesome, mate. It was it was a tough one because it was the start of the workshop, the very first day, so it set the bar so high. I usually like to reserve this stuff for the end of the week, go out on a high note, not on the first day.
It's nice to have one in the bag though. It takes the pressure off, you know what I mean? Like we've all had those workshops where the weather just doesn't sort of come to the party, and you're like going, give me a break, just something for everyone.
We need
here
something
to take home.
something for people to be stoked on. So it worked out. It was really fun, mate. This one here. Now this is a funny one. I run workshops down at Bermagui. I have, since I started running workshops, so 2014 really. I've been there so many times down the coast, and it was on the last, I think 2018 when I captured this. Now what happened, you can see this tree from the road, but it doesn't look anything like this. And I spotted it in 2017. I was like, that kind of looks interesting, but it didn't look like it would really work. And anyway, I think it was mid 2018. I had a day break between the two workshops that I run. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for a walk, stretch my legs. I'll go have a look and see what this is like. And when I got here, and you have to walk around the corner to actually view this, I was absolutely blown away. I'd never seen a single photo of it. It just is the perfect recipe for a landscape photo. Obviously, a lone tree on a sea stack and, these foregrounds and that. I was just blown away, mate. And I remember I returned and I shot it that sunset and then sunrise the next morning. And when I showed a friend who lives in the area, I was like, mate, because he's a photographer too. I said, dude, has anyone ever shot, look at this place I found. I showed him the iPhone shot. And he was like, oh, that's One Tree Rock. And when he showed me the existing photo of it, but he said, oh, there's one guy who's shot it. And when he showed me the guy's shot, it was from the other side where it just doesn't look as impressive. Yeah. So I was like, nah, man, he hasn't shot it properly. And anyhow, what I'm getting at is it's been pretty cool and just one of those things where I think I turned on 500px the other day and bang, this was on someone else's version of this. I've just seen this tree in the last year and a half just pop up a few times. And that's what happens, in landscape photography. you can maybe find somewhere. I'm not saying new, because obviously this has been here for quite a long time, but something pops up that is fresh for the region or that area, and then people start hitting the ground running and looking for it. And yeah, I've seen a few nice images pop up
Yeah.
since I've taken this one. But for me, the reason why I'm sharing this in the talk today was this pure joy I had. Like I said, I just had not seen a single photo here ever. It just didn't exist. So for me to walk around the corner and then behold this thing and say, this is like one of the best seascape shots, not shot, but locations on the south coast, and we've already got Camel Rock and Horsehead Rock
Yeah.
around the corner. I was just stoked, man. I was like, this is incredible. How cool is that? So I was so excited to point the camera at this thing and try and take a photo. And yeah, this is obviously the result at the end of the day.
Mate, yeah, I know exactly where this is now, and I've seen it from the road or seen it from that bridge or the other headland
Yeah,
back up the other way. And
yeah.
this is the first shot I've ever seen of it. I didn't know it looked like this from it
There you
down in
go.
front. I'm going down
No,
there. I'm going down
yeah.
soon and get that
I
shot.
think it's done. It's popped up a bit now, mate. Like I said, but and that's good. That's how things. That's what happens in landscape photography. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just remember this joy. I was like, I just took a couple of iPhone shots. I was sending it to my mate. He's a photographer in the States. I was like, dude, look at this thing that I've just uncovered.
Yeah, it's
Because
epic.
you reach your point, especially for me. I was already living in NZ when I come back and shot this, so I kind of felt like I'd exhausted my seascape shooting and what I could do in Australia, because I'd shot it, 300 days a year for 4 years straight. I lived in Wollongong, so it was so easy for me to access all these amazing seascapes, whether it's Central Coast, Sydney, Wollongong, Kaima, or down here.
Yeah.
I was just shooting it all the time, and I just felt like I'd reached that point where I've contributed what I could, and creatively, I just couldn't do anything that was fulfilling. So then to find something fresh after all those years, it was like, wow, like it just shows you that you can't ever stop.
Yeah.
There's always something new you can do or find or whatever it is. And
There
for
is.
me, that's what it is. It's about fulfilling that, just trying to keep doing something fresh that fulfills that inner creative desire, and this definitely ticked the box because I hadn't seen it done before.
No.
If I'd seen it shot a few times before, then I just probably wouldn't have maybe come down. I don't know. Back in the day, I would have, but for me now, I really enjoy trying to look for new stuff, and
Yeah,
it's
sure.
exciting to make something new. So yeah, I was just so stoked, man. And it's a really good shot. If anyone's thinking of coming here as well, you just got to be weary because there's a channel that you cross over to get around this corner
Right.
from the headland.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's depending on what the ocean's doing, you can get a good drenching there. So just something
Be
to
careful.
keep in
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
I wanted to include this one as well. Similar type of story. Cathedral Rocks for me, I remember going there the first time, 2012, and it was
Uh-huh.
only because someone on social media said, "Oh, you live down that way. You should check out Cathedral Rocks at Kiama."
Mm.
Now, mate, I've lived my whole life in the Illawarra, and as a kid, I'd played soccer. You'd go to Kiama every couple of weeks. I knew Kiama like the back of my hand, but when someone said Cathedral Rocks at Kiama, I thought, what are they talking about, Cathedral? And I think I just ignored the ignored the comment. I was like, I think they've got the wrong, place.
Yeah.
And eventually, I looked it up. I must have jumped on Google. Who knows? This is back in, like I said, probably 2012, and I looked it up and I went, you're kidding me. Those rocks are down there and I eventually come down and had a look, and Cathedral Rocks has just been my go-to, as it has been for a few people now over the years, but it was just my go-to photography. I almost call it like my training ground. This is where I'd come and just learn photography, basically. I had Wollongong Harbour and everything with the lighthouses there, but these sea stacks are world class, and the sunrises that you can shoot here and everything. And over the years, I've got lightning photos here, amazing sunrises. I've seen whales breaching in the distance, mother and calf.
Mm.
Just all these fond memories. And it was one of the first places that I started running private workshops. People from Sydney would come down. I'd say, let's meet at Cathedral Rocks, blah, blah. So what I'm getting at, it's held a place in my heart all these years. And once I moved to New Zealand, or just prior to moving here to NZ, I remember saying, man, the one thing I wanted was the rainbow at Cathedral. Like I said, I got the lightning. The lightning was like the bucket list shot,
Yeah.
and got a few images here. And I was trying to get this rainbow shot while I lived in Australia, and had a few close calls, but just didn't quite get it. And then moved to NZ, and I thought, well, just have to let this one go. And when I come back to Oz, probably around the same time I shot the tree tower, the previous shot,
Yep.
I was here, this is last year, and I was doing some tutorial filming. And when it was time for us to go home, and I had to get back to Wollongong, half an hour away for a family dinner. And as my mate drove off, the videographer, I looked at the sky, and it was just that perfect recipe for a rainbow. Rain cloud out in the afternoon, out to the east, and out to the west was a huge blue opening where the sun was going to eventually, come through. And I've had so many of these moments over the years where you're like, oh, should I? Maybe I better get home. You're running late, dinner's on, all that type of stuff. And you get that intuition as well. And I just thought, no, this is going to happen. I've got that feeling, and if it didn't happen now, I'll probably never capture it, So I drove down here, started jogging. I've lost count of the amount of times I've jogged to this spot because, I got here, I started framing up compositions, could see the color shift starting to happen in the sky, ripped my pants off, mate. So I'm in the underwear because I like to get low and close. So no one's around. I'm in the undies, and then bang. And I've got iPhone footage of this as well. It just perfectly, as you can see, just more or less right down the middle. And I could move around, and when you do that, you can move the rainbow wherever you want it when you're moving your composition. And ended up photographing this image here. And it was just thinking, the odds of me living in another country now and then coming back and more or less being in Kiama for that one afternoon. And it just happened to be the time I got this. To me, it was like the final chapter of my Cathedral Rocks photography over the last 8 years. And it was like just sealing the deal, the bookend. And look, to be honest, I don't know if I shed a tear, but I remember just sitting back afterwards and just going like, man, just
absolutely.
Sometimes you have these moments that happen in nature where you just truly are humbled. And a rainbow is not that rare, but it was more the backstory and everything like that. Yeah. And then not long after that, mate, not long after I sat there and was in utter awe, a woman came around the corner up of this right-hand side, just having an afternoon walk. And here I am in the undies, just the T-shirt's wet from like the chest down. So wet T-shirt and then just undies. And it was just so awkward. Like with So it was pretty quick to put the pants back on. And but anyway, so that was a good memory.
Before the police got there,
Yeah, exactly. She was probably like early 20s, but I'm 32 now, mate. So anyone younger than me just looks like young, I feel really old. So I was like, oh no, this doesn't, I got to get. But it was really enjoyable and just humbled by the whole experience.
This shot, it does remind me of some of your tutorials actually that I watched a couple of months back, and I noticed on there that you don't not real keen on a tripod a lot of the time, which is something I'm not overly keen on as well. I just like the ability to just sort of shoot casually and capture the moment,
Oh, exactly. In every photo that I've shown, except that's a tripod because it's 2012, but that's no tripod, no tripod, no tripod, no tripod. So it's just safe to assume that it's no tripod.
You're getting a little bit of movement in the water there. So what sort of a shutter speed are you shooting
I've got
at?
two methods there. I can shoot 1/8 of a second. Pretty much 9 out of 10, the whole shot's sharp at 1/8 of a second. 1/8 of a second will more or less get this effect on the water anyway. But sometimes I might want a little bit slower, depending on the location. If it's a river, you need to slow it down more, maybe half a second or 1 second. So all I do in that scenario is just do it handheld. And of course, now your rocks and everything will be a little bit fuzzy. But I do it after I've taken my 1/8 or 1/10 of a second shot. So this one here, I believe, was a single image anyway.
Yeah.
But it would just be a matter of framing up and going, bang, that's 1/10. And now I just slow it down and shoot the slower shutter speeds. And then in Photoshop, obviously, it's just so easy to blend it. And for me, that's faster and just it frees me up creatively in the field than getting a tripod out. Can you tripod in wet sand? I know very well because I did it for so many years. It's an absolute nightmare. And then there's a rainbow happening. I don't want to be touching a tripod or filters, mate. I'm just here with a wide angle lens and a camera, and then that's it. So and that's just something that I've organically started doing over the years. It wasn't a direct decision like I want to stop using filters and a tripod. It was just over time going, maybe I won't use it and see what happens. And then eventually I'm truly at the point now, mate, where I only use the tripod for astro, and I do astro once a year when I go to Iceland, and that's it. I just don't shoot the stars. So I don't touch I don't even know where the tripod is, mate, to be honest. I just don't bring it. It's not like I get to a spot and say, do I need one or don't I? I just make it work without it. And I try and encourage people to at least try that approach. Not everyone can do it because depending on the camera you have and
Mm,
the handshake, but I think it's worth knowing that it's more than possible, because years ago, I remember going down to a place like this, probably was Cathedral, got to the car park and realized I left the tripod at home, and just, bummer. And, had to leave
yeah,
because I thought that it wasn't possible. You just have this thing like you need a tripod, otherwise you can't do this stuff. And it's just not true. And I just
absolutely.
find it creatively, it allows me to just explore the location and be a bit more fluid and get in that flow state. Whereas the tripod, it's just a big crutch. It basically says, no, you have to adhere to this certain, and it just slows me down. And
Yeah.
once you start shooting handheld more, to use a tripod is torturous, absolutely
I
torturous.
agree, mate. I'm in the same vein. I hardly ever use my tripod. And one thing for me as well is it becomes part of your style and who you are as a photographer. Like,
Yeah.
one thing that I'll say is don't, for anyone out there, don't force yourself to do what you think you have to do. You
Mm.
don't have to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and shoot sunrise if you don't enjoy doing that. You don't have to use a tripod if you find them a bit cumbersome, because you'll find ways around it. And those ways you find around it will then become part of your style as a photographer. So we'll notice that through some of Will's seascapes here, there'll be that, eighth of a second or half a second. So just a little bit of movement that adds to the drama of the image, but not, I guess you probably don't do a lot of 30-second exposures anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the other reason for that is I know I've done that in the past. I used to have the 10 stop and all
Sure.
that, but I just didn't like the look. I just felt like when I looked, for me personally,
Yeah.
it just looked straight away. It looked a little bit like just prefabricated, like some kind of digital art, essentially.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know. I guess I'm trying to. I just like something that looks a bit more. If I was a painter, for example,
Yeah.
I would do the water like this. I would leave it a little bit sharp, a little bit soft,
A bit
and
of
who
movement.
knows, mate?
Yeah.
Could change my mind in 5, 6 years. There's no right or wrong.
No.
It was just a decision that I went down. But look, sometimes I see shots, where people have done the 1 minute exposures, and I go, oh, all the time it happens. You go, man, that's a nice shot.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool is we can all do and contribute our own different things to collectively make up what landscape photography actually is. But it's definitely worth people just having a bit of a dabble and realize. And like I said, no filters. And I've got nothing wrong with filters or filter companies or anything, but it's broken my heart sometimes where I've had clients come along to a workshop and they're like, cool, I just brought this big kit and it cost them $1,000. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, like I genuinely felt bad because it's like, man, they just spent literally $1,000 on something that we won't touch this week at all. And moving forward, they might realize they didn't quite need it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's good for people to, yeah, just get out there and play different times of day, different light, different settings. And don't think that, okay, I'm a landscape photographer, I have to have the tripod over the shoulder and walk around like this. And, there's so many different ways to do things and get the same result, or different results, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just worth having a play
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
see what suits you best. But like I said, I still have people in the workshop, probably more often than not. They they won't go down this road because maybe they don't want to muck around in Photoshop later on to blend in the water, or maybe their hands are a bit shaky. They don't have a mirrorless system, so they just can't shoot the slow shutters like
Yeah.
I can with a stabilized body. There's lots of different factors that come into it, and there's no right or wrong for sure. And sometimes I'll see a good blue hour shot, and I can't do blue hour shots because it's too dark.
Yeah.
I'm shooting when there's light on the landscape, and then that's it. So yeah, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong,
No.
but that's just the road that I've gone down there. And for something like this, it's just an
Oh,
absolute nightmare.
wow.
This shot here. This is doubtful sound here in New Zealand. I've
Sure.
been to this little spot a few times up here. Need a helicopter to get here. There's no tracks. Even if you wanted to do this on foot, it'd be probably a good, it's just not possible, mate. Like it's just
Yeah.
too hard.
Yeah.
There's no roads. So a helicopter little spot here, and just you can look on Google Maps and see. Hang on, this could work good. Topographic maps. That's how I do a bit of scouting. You
Yeah.
find ridge lines, and you're basically looking for compositions via a map instead of in
Sure.
person. So this was probably the fourth time I'd been to this spot, and yeah, we just got hit the jackpot with
Mm.
this rainbow
Mm.
early morning. You could see it coming, just like that Cathedral Rocks one. The rain was just sitting over these. It's clear behind us. You can pretty much just start placing your bets about what time the rainbow is going to occur. And this one here lasted over 45 minutes, no
Oh, wow.
exaggeration. And for me, it was more just the wow factor of, okay, this, the field of view that you're looking at here, you can't even fit this in with a 16 mil lens. This is a vertical panorama of like 7 or 8 frames from left to right to get that almost 180-degree field of view to show the whole fjord
Mm,
stretching around. So to see it, be there in the flesh and just looking at it was, man, just so humbling. And the hardest part here was just putting the whole thing together in Photoshop, because the foreground and midground is a single wide angle horizontal frame,
yep,
just single shot. Then the background was the panorama,
gotcha.
and that was just to try and get the whole, what the eye can see, get it in one frame. And the reason why I had to do the separate 16 mil foreground was because when you're doing a vertical pano like that, it's impossible to get a foreground like this, because the whole foreground is just getting shifted and
Yeah.
stretched out. So to put this in Photoshop, most photos of mine, like this one here, this is an hour max, to put that together, do the editing. This was probably 7 or 8 hours of just,
Oh, right.
even just the stitching of the pano.
Mm,
It warps, and now I've got, you got the horseshoe shape, so you're trying to straighten it and
yep.
tracing around these reeds here. And oh
Oh,
man, it
dear,
was
yeah.
a big mission, but really worthwhile in the end. It was a really solid shot, just looking down the right hand side, and that's how I'd photographed this place in the past, just getting the waterfall, these plants, and then looking down that section, and that looked great with the half the rainbow coming in. And I thought, oh, that's probably all I'll probably process. But then once
Yep.
I put the pano together, and it was pretty hard to not go ahead with the full bow, knowing that I'll never get that again, not from this location. It's just
Yeah.
too rare. So
Yeah.
yeah, really, and had a few guys with me, a few friends slash workshop clients from over the years, and just all of us just in complete awe. And it just got to the point where the cameras were put down. You've done your iPhone videos, you've done your selfies, and now all you can do is just sit back
Enjoy
and
it.
smile about how great life is. It was it just
Absolutely.
sat there for so long, because this far south with the latitude, the movement of the sun is much slower, just like in Iceland and up in the
Yeah,
northern
okay.
hemisphere. You're on that smaller curvature of the earth, so that rotation of the sun, and it just sat on that low angle for so long. And yeah, at least 45 minutes we had rainbow action going on. And it's just, yeah,
Amazing.
unreal, man. Good fun.
Absolutely spectacular, mate.
What do we got here? Oh yeah.
I'm
What I
trying
love
to.
about, so where I live, Tianau, down in the southwest of the South Island, Tianau is what we call the gateway to Fiordland
Hmm.
National Park. And Fiordland National Park is the 5th largest national park in the world. And it's fjords, so glacially carved valleys flooded by the ocean, and it's full of temperate rainforest, glaciated mountains, Milford Sound, the iconic Milford Sound, and just wilderness. There's so much wilderness here. And what happens in Fiordland, because we have the warm air that travels from Australia across the Tasman, when that warm air hits the South Island, the Southern Alps, it rapidly rises and cools, and it
Yep.
turns into condensation. So Fiordland itself, not where I live, because Tianau, we've got a few mountains away, before you hit the ocean. So we're in the shadow of the mountains itself, like it's called the shadow effect, where the rain doesn't extend over here, which is great. But in greater Fiordland, particularly on the coastal side, they can get up to 10 meters of rain per year. It's just known for its rain. Everyone talks about it with Milford Sound,
Sure.
obviously. So one of the things I wanted to capture not long after moving here was, I want to capture the rain in all its glory, because all of these waterfalls that you see in this image, if it stops raining, these waterfalls are gone in about 20 minutes. They're purely just fed from rain. There's no supply basin or lakes up here or anything. So in the rain, mate, you're just exposed to so much power and wonderful sights of these thousands of waterfalls. And this was just the challenge of, all right, and how can I capture it? Not just a single waterfall, but show the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I remember, I shoot a lot here in the rain, as you can probably imagine. And the challenge of it, it's very hard, obviously, but I've just really become used to it now. And I just have a big towel basically that I drape over the camera, and then when I'm shooting, I'm trying to just get under there. And you can buy rain sleeves and things, but you
Sure.
probably picked up by now that I'm lazy and I just try. I don't want to put it around. I just get caught up in the moment. I just want to go. So yeah, I just remember shooting this one in this river, rushing. Even this river disappears when the rain stops.
Sure.
And yeah, just it was so hard to get one clean file. Every frame had a big blob of rain,
Droplet,
on the
yeah.
lens, and yeah, so probably a bit of cleaning up that was done in this image. But this is 2018, this one, and I still am proud of the attempt here, what I was able to create, because it's just
Oh, it's
such a
magic.
challenge
Yeah,
to do
really
that.
dramatic.
And I've almost tried to do a different version of this since then, and it's just so hard to. You might have the rain and the waterfalls, but you can't see the mountains because the cloud base is so low. You can't see these mountains anymore. And for me, that was one of the main competitions, was getting those peaks in. And that happens a lot here in Fiordland, is you have these spontaneous moments where things are close but not quite right, and then every now and then, bang, everything will align for a 5-minute window, and you just got to jump on it and react. And that was the case on this particular afternoon. And truly, I guess these are the images that I enjoy making, ones that are a challenge in the field. And also, I just like the look of this darker photo that's quite gloomy and whatnot. I just like that because that's what this place is. It's very brooding and powerful. And even in talking about the rain, in February, we received 1,000 mil of rain in 2 days, and
Oh,
it was
what?
declared a state of emergency.
Yeah.
And I was helicoptered out of this area because the roads exploded from water. It was just insane. And all that did was make me want to get in there even more, because the power of it. I just love drama and feeling the power of nature, whether it's wind, rain, storms, all that type of thing. Give me that any day over just a pretty sunset. I want to be out there like
Yeah.
screaming and even being a little bit scared almost. That's what I like
Oh,
to do.
absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think, the romanticist painters, it was called, the sublime, trying to capture
Okay.
the sublime. And the sublime is essentially the beauty combined with a sense of terror that you experience in nature. And I think everyone can probably relate to that, where sometimes
Absolutely.
you're looking up at something and it's beautiful, and then a part of you feels a bit intimidated and almost frightful because it reminds you of how small we are.
Mm.
And I guess that's what I'm always trying to pursue in my photography.
Yeah, I think you got it in that one, mate. Oh, this is another
Bit of a
beauty.
different, just speaking about those floods, and it's unfortunate, but a location like this is now not accessible and probably doesn't even exist, because the road to get to this little spot, and this spot is still not on the side of the road. It's a little bit of a bush bash through the forest,
Mm.
but the floods that occurred, the road to get there, because I got trapped and I ended up using a heli the next day to document all the damage. And these photos just can't be made anymore. So the shot I've got here and a few people that I was able to take to these little cascades and things are just now part of history that can't ever be done again. But this is just typical Fiordland beach forest. And the bright patches here are from the afternoon light. So behind me is a big valley with a few openings, and as the sun come down, it was just putting this nice gentle light that was just coming through the midground here. And mate, just to stand here as a child, I wasn't into nature much, but there was a few times where my parents would take me and my auntie and uncle into Macquarie Pass rainforest, which is just outside Albion Park in the
Yep.
Illawarra.
Yep.
And I just had real fond memories of being in the forest, the trees. When my mum did a painting, I always loved the green waterfall ones. It's always something that's resonated with me, is just the green and rainforest. So for me, this is just the ultimate. It's the happy place where you can have rushing, crystal clear water, surrounded by every shade of green possible. It's just, no, mate, just paradise. And
Yeah.
I
Again,
just love,
very
yeah.
paintedly. Very paintedly.
Yeah, and this is just a single exposure,
It's
like
beautiful.
I said, probably 1/8, 1/6, who knows what it was. But I just enjoy that soft but sharp look on the water there. And so a few people that I've taken here, they've got some beautiful images too,
Mm.
and different takes. But yeah, just what a spot, mate. Just beautiful. I put this one in here just because I only processed this one recently. I captured this in 2018, but I never ended up processing it because I got an angle down lower on the shoreline of the lake and dramatized the broken ice, which is pretty common in
Okay.
landscape
Yeah.
photography.
Yeah.
And I always thought this maybe had potential, but I don't really like sharing two shots from the one session if they look too similar. But it was
Sure.
only when we hit lockdown a few months ago that I went back through the raw files, as I'm sure a lot of people have. And I put this together and I was like, you know what, I think I like it now. And yeah, the main thing here was the backstory of this location. It's Lake Mackenzie on the Rootburn track in Fiordland. And I'd never seen it frozen before or seen a photo of it frozen over. I just didn't realize that happened. And yeah, come up here one winter, 2018. We had fresh snow, and then it was just a week of just cold, bitterly cold temperatures. And this particular morning was at almost -10, just real frosty, frozen, but magic. It was just me and one other bloke, a good friend and client of mine, and just unreal to have the whole place to ourselves. The hut, there's a hut here. We had that to ourselves. No one had been there for like 4 weeks prior because winter down here is just like a ghost town. So the beautiful silence that winter brings and the purity of the snow on the landscape, it's just unrivaled. And what was happening was when the ice on the lake would sometimes, I don't know if it was expanding or contracting, one or the other, but it would make this noise that sounded like a lightsaber. And
Oh, yeah.
it would
Yeah.
just echo through the whole valley. It would be like pew, 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 and just like blast off. And just unreal, man. Just such a fun shoot. And I'll tell you what, the warm coffee after this one was, that's probably the highlight, actually.
Yeah.
That nice warm coffee. But yeah, it's magical when you get the snow on these beach trees like we got here. And yeah, it was
Oh,
good.
it's gorgeous, mate. I
Challenging.
heard that sound in Iceland. It's just surreal, isn't it? You're like, what is this? Like,
Yeah, it's
just
just,
sort
at
of
first
pinging
it freaked
around.
us out a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah, it was so loud. We thought, what's going on here? But a decent hike about a 4-hour hike to get here. But to
Okay.
do it after the fresh snow dump meant we had chains on our boots the whole time to grip. And as it turned out, one of mine broke. So half the trek home was without the chain. And it was just like ice skating. I was literally dragging this other leg along because if I put it
Oh,
down,
wow.
the whole trail, it's part of a trail, but the trail was just covered in ice and snow. So it was, yeah, we really worked hard for this shot, and it was
Absolutely.
definitely worth it in the end. It was really good fun.
Is there a cabin you can stay in there overnight, Will, or is it?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, it's part of like the Rootburn track's like one of the great walks in New Zealand.
Okay.
So they have these huts every X amount of kilometers, and you can use the hut there. And yeah, like I said, it's like an 80-bed hut, this facility with a
Yep.
kitchen and everything. And we obviously just had the whole place to ourselves because winter, it's not advisable to come up here in winter because there's a few avalanche zones that you need to
Sure.
pass through, which is obviously very dangerous. So we ended up dragging the mattresses down out of the bunk room and put them by the fire down in the kitchen area
Yeah.
because, like I said, it was just freezing, and even sleeping next to the fire didn't didn't go far. But
Sure.
the night before this, we were up on another mountain in like -13 inside the tent. So after coming from that to then having a hut for the night, it was like the Rolls Royce of accommodation options.
Absolutely.
For this image here, just for people who might be interested, single exposure, just bang. Oh, actually, no, focus stack. So handheld focus stack, just to get this front tree sharp, and then the background sharp. So I just do that handheld focus on the front here, recompose, and then take
Yep.
that shot,
Yep.
refocus for the background. But it was a crystal clear morning. There was no cloud in the sky. So what I did when I just processed this one recently was just threw these, just a bit of white cloud up there. And for me, that's just helping fill the negative space. If I
Mm.
left that as blue, it just becomes a hole where the eye just wants to go through there.
Yeah.
As far as like, do I do composites or whatever? I'm not a fan of, say, compositing a rainbow or lightning or any significant
Sure.
things
Sure.
like that. But when it comes to cloud, then yeah, I just feel like, it's just a part of, it's something that's going to change. If someone come here, they could see all of this
Yeah.
and the sky is going to be different every time. And I just felt like for me, sometimes that just helps you achieve that artistic vision and helps guide the eye. And if I do a sky replacement, it's not going, oh, I'm going to chuck a fireball sky in here and make this shot. It's more finding the right colors and texture and shape in that sky to complement the rest of the scene. Just like once again, if I was a painter or something, you wouldn't just make everything a red sunset so it looks good on Instagram. You would
Yeah.
actually think about it and say, what color tones here would match? What time of day was it when I shot this? What would the color in the sky be? Etc.
No, absolutely. I think it adds that wintry sense to it as well, more so than maybe what that crisp blue sky would maybe, be more of a springtime type image.
Yeah,
At
that's
least for
it.
me, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Mount Cook, tallest mountain in the country in New Zealand.
Woo.
Everyone's probably heard of Mount Cook. Now, when I run workshops, or when I used to run workshops here, I do some aerial photography with the clients. And would use a plane that could fit us all in. Everyone would get a window, even myself, but I would take the one window that had a slight curve in the glass, which meant
Yep.
that the shots would always have little soft areas. It was just not shootable. You couldn't, for my seat, all the clients got flat glass, so cool, they could get images.
Yep.
But what happened was, even when I lived in Australia, I'd come over, I've got like permits to run tours here, and so I'd probably had about 7 or 8 sunrise or sunsets flights in this area around Mount Cook and just the Southern Alps in general, where I saw some pretty amazing stuff, mate, but could not get a single shot of it because I was there. It's the workshop, it's for the
Yep.
clients.
Yep.
But that obviously it's hard as you're looking at this stuff, you're like, man, look what a shot, and you'd shoot it and it's just soft. And what happened on this occasion, this was maybe 12 months ago now when I captured this, but since moving here, I've obviously had more time and flexibility to chase weather conditions and do a bit more aerial shooting alone or whatever. And that's what this one was. It was, and the reason why I'm including that in this little series is it just meant so much to me to go years of flying around the area and not having a single photo in the portfolio. And then this was almost like I don't know what the word is, but it just made it that much sweeter to be
Yeah.
like, all right, waited years, helped the guys get their amazing photos, saw some good stuff, and just couldn't, wasn't able to get the shots. And then this was like the reward almost, the hard putting
Absolutely.
in years of just kind of being patient, I guess, whatever you want to say. And I think I'd had times where I'd chartered a plane again alone and still couldn't get a shot here because the wind and flying, there's so many variables. Sometimes you might try to get somewhere and bang, the light is no good, and I'll just say to the pilot, no, I've got a plan B. You got to have about 40 plans up your sleeve when you
Yep.
do aerials. And yeah, so this was just that culmination of years of not being able to, years of not quite being able to because of the conditions. And then finally to look at this, I just remember flying by and just being like, oh man, you couldn't have asked for anything more. To get the cloud in the sky, the low cloud sweeping around, single exposure here, nothing's been touched, just so rewarding. The one thing we had to wait for was the light to come through. The sun was behind this high cloud,
Yeah. Okay.
and when that happens, it's just like putting a diffuser
Quite
on.
flat. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get the light on the landscape, but I could see on the horizon there's a little gap coming. So it's just a matter of wasting 10 minutes in the air because I knew this was the composition. There was no point mucking around and going elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of doing a few laps around, patiently waiting. And then it was like, now's the time. Just, yeah, bang, bang, bang. So
Yeah.
just,
It's
mate,
gorgeous, mate. It's
pretty
gorgeous.
rewarding to be flying when you're up this high, 12,000 feet. It's pretty humbling, and you can almost freak yourself out as well because we've got the window open and you can just you try not to think about it, but
Yeah, I
the
know.
camera's a good distraction.
Just a quick question. Someone was
Yeah,
asking, what camera system are you using?
using the Sony A7R III with 16 to 35,
Okay.
100 to 400, etc. Now with the Sony, I jumped on Sony when they first released the original A7R. I was a Canon shooter, and then when the A7R came out, that was the world's first full frame mirrorless.
Yeah.
And I remember jumping on that, and people laughed at me, mate. They literally, they were like, "What do you mean Sony?" Because Sony was just not on the radar. It was all
Yeah.
Canon
Yeah.
and Nikon. And look, I jumped on them then. I was using Canon glass with the Sony system. And then, the rest is history. It's just been incredible watching that technology excel to where it's got to now, and the lens lineup and everything they have. It's actually been almost humorous just watching all these other photographers
Switching
that
over.
switching over, and I just watch them drop like flies, and I'd get all these inquiries about, is it really good? I hear the battery sucks. And, Sony, just every model, they just address the problems. And now it's got to the point where,
Yeah.
I think they're the number one retailer in the States anyway. So it's
I
been,
was only looking at them yesterday. In fact, I'd love to switch to the Sony and get a couple of pancake lenses and really reduce the size of my kit.
it all makes a difference, like it
Yeah.
was only last week I had a workshop with someone here and she was on the Canon, and she was like, "Oh, can I just pick it up?" And she's picked it up, and she's like, "Oh, you're kidding me." And it's only a few grams here and there, but if you're walking around all day, whatever it is, it does all add up. But look, for me, it was just the dynamic range. Really,
Sure.
that was the main thing, and then everything else that's come along with that's been a bonus. This
Beautiful.
one, pretty popular location. This is the Tasman Lake in Mount Cook. But the difference here is that I've jumped on the pack raft, so I've got an inflatable raft that I
Uh-huh.
can hike with. This was the second time trying this shot, and this is about a kilometre from the shoreline. So most photos you'd see from here are way off to the left, and all this moraine wall where I've got the mouse over this side,
Yep.
that's blocking your view. It doesn't quite, it's nice, but anyway, so I was able to come out on this morning, and man, just, it's so humbling to be around these ice pieces. Now, the one in the distance here, that is about the size of an 8-story building, to give you some
Ah,
perspective. So when you're out on the water at sunrise, and then the nearest humans are a couple of k's away in the village, and you're on this glacial lake, crystal clear sun, it is just magnificent, mate. So,
looks
it's just up there,
spectacular.
one of the
Yeah.
best experiences you can have, really.
Yeah.
And the challenge is finding the right composition, because these ice pieces, when I was here, the sunset the day before, I didn't even get on the raft. I just had a look at the lake, and there was hardly any ice. It just depends on what the glacier's carving off on that given day. So when the morning came and I was in the tent and I woke up and I'm like, oh, do I really feel like walking here, inflating a raft? You can psych yourself out pretty easily, especially
Mm.
when you're solo. And anyway, obviously I decided, come on, just get on with it, because to get to this place is a 5-hour drive from my house, and I'd come up here to get this shot. So I was like, come on, Will, just get out there and stop mucking around. And yeah, thankfully come out, and there was all these fresh ice pieces. And then this little guy here, this one's probably, a meter wide type thing, and he was just kind of hovering on the water there. And the nice, reflectiveness, because some of the
Mm.
ice pieces are fuzzy and they don't have that luminosity where
Yeah,
it
the
catches the
crystal.
light.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the challenge with shooting on the water in a moving raft is that you're always moving. You cannot sit still. Whether the ice is moving, you're moving, you just can't ever stay still. So it's incredibly hard to frame it up, and you're just kind of firing away a bit more than you'd probably like to. And this was a focus stack here, so I just focused on that, and bang, and then quickly focused in the background, and got that sharp as well. But yeah, real challenging. After this shot, I ended up going over to this large section, and there's a little hole over here, and I was mucking around for ages, but it just ended up being too complex. And
Sure.
this simple shot here was enough. It really won me over. But it's very intimidating, because when you go over to these big guys, they sometimes will roll over, and it's the equivalent is like a semi
Yeah.
trailer just flipping, and what's under the water is often more than what's above the water. So I didn't even go anywhere near the skyscraper back here. But even this one was the size of a bus, basically.
Sure.
And yeah, the whole time, I'm holding on to the ice with my hand, or you're using the paddle to try and stabilize yourself, and then you're slowly drifting away, and you're trying to shoot with one hand. And I just laugh at man, because it's just like in the
Oh,
moment, it's
yeah.
like incredibly, you're kind of sweating, it's like 0 degrees, and you're sweating because you're trying not to fall in. Or but once again,
Wow.
I like,
Yeah. Falling in
oh
could be life and death type
yeah,
experience,
exactly.
couldn't it?
And I wear a life vest, so at least you'll float. But the hypothermia, you're going to have a few minutes, mate,
If you
before
can't
you're
get
going to.
back in that boat, you're in trouble. Yeah.
It's funny, because when I come back from this shoot, I'm paddling back in. I could see a bunch of photographers on the normal shooting area,
Yeah.
and they all spotted me, and they had this look like I'd seen a ghost, which is understandable, because the last thing you expect is suddenly a guy on a boat to. And there was another Australian photographer running a workshop here, and yeah, they were just they were just like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on here? It's like, this is what I like to do, mate. You got to get out there and
Yeah. Get
cross, because
amongst it.
their compositional options are just incredible once you get out here. But yeah, good fun, and just blessed with an amazing sunrise that just reflected in the water as
Yeah. It's
well.
a beauty.
Just layers of
Oh, I
Fiordland
love it.
National
Yeah.
Park, and yeah, I love aerial photography, and been fortunate to do a lot. And I've learned so much over the years about what to do in the air, what's going to work when the light's doing certain things. It's
Mm.
just not as simple as just pay a pilot and go up. If you want to actually walk away with solid shots, there's just so many factors that you need to consider. And even like to get these light beams, that's just coming down to the humidity in the air, just little things like that I've just picked up. But the reason why I've included this one here is there's a mate of mine who's also a full-time photographer from the States, Mark Adamus. People have probably heard of him.
Yeah,
And
yeah, incredible
he's someone that
photographer.
I've looked up to since 2000, pretty much since I picked a camera up. I've just always admired his work, and we've become friends over the years, which I'm really thankful for. And on this occasion, this is back in just December, just past, he was here with his family, his wife
Okay.
and son. He's come over a few times. We've done a lot of shooting together over the years, but this trip was purely just a family trip for him, a holiday. And anyway, he wanted to catch up with the families. And as you do, he said we should get up in the air and show the families what we get to see. So we've jumped up there, and Mark's a very, very generous man, and we went around in the helicopter for quite some time. We had a picnic at one spot where I had the rainbow. We stopped there for a picnic dinner. And anyway, this photo just happened right at the end. It's time for us to go home
Yeah.
after our picnic dinner on this mountaintop. And as we're flying away, we've seen the light out here in the distance. And
Yeah.
this is like a 300-400 mil perspective. So if you're a non-photographer, which is the other half of the helicopter crew, my
Yep.
wife and his wife and our kids, you just can't quite see and appreciate this because it's so far off on the horizon. But me and Mark are just like, oh, you're kidding. Look at those layers. And, put the lenses up, and, you can just pull all that background in and get a shot like this, just single exposure. But I included it just for the memory of, having it with someone who I really respect and look up to. And then having our families there, like all in the same helicopter at the same time. So for me, when I look at this photo, I just remember that really fun time of where we had my son, just everyone all together while we created these shots. And if you told me 5-6 years ago that, oh yeah, one day I'll be hanging out with the one guy I've looked up to, and
Yeah.
just say, yeah, right, it's not going to happen. So just pretty cool moment for me to experience that.
Oh, absolutely. He's a legend of landscape photography.
Oh, he is. He's a pioneer of modern digital landscape photography, no doubt. Back to what I was speaking about before,
Man,
mate, with
love
the
this,
rain.
mate. Love it.
Yeah, thanks. This is Stirling Falls in Milford Sound, and it's pretty common here. The boats, when you do the Milford cruise, they go under Stirling Falls, and everyone gets wet, and everyone has fun time. But when you have those days, which only happens it happens a lot to get this much rain, but this was just on another level where you've got all these myriads of waterfalls now coming down either side of it, and they don't even put the boat under on these days. It's just suicide. They can't do it.
Sure.
And I tried previously to get this type of stormy image up close here, and I got close, but I wasn't quite happy with the composition. And this just happened to be the day where it all paid off, and really stoked with the way. I don't know if you can see it through your screen, but it's just got the blasting spray just coming out, man. And it was just the frame after this, the camera's banged. I was absolutely saturated, but just was able to get the shot before that it was unusable basically. And it's really hard.
Tell me you're not in the pack raft again, are you?
Oh, no way. No. I feel sick thinking about that. This is 150 meters tall here.
Oh, okay.
Not a chance in the world, man.
Is this the edge of the
if you go
waterfall,
halfway down the fjord, Milford
Okay.
Sound itself, yeah, so 150 meter waterfall plummeting in,
Sure.
and normally it's quite picturesque. And the most popular shot is the way the waterfall hits the ocean and sprays out like a spider.
Yeah, I've seen that.
You would have seen that before. That's really fun to shoot. But yeah, this one was saying, all right, how can I show the madness of the raw power? What happens here on a windy, stormy day? And this shot's only really possible, obviously the rain, but also the wind. If the wind's doing the wrong thing, you just can't get a shot. You're just getting blasted. So it just happened that at that right moment, the right wind gust come in, and it allowed me to be this close. And this is 16 mil perspective, kind of framing it all up there. But yeah, I was just happy. I felt like I finally captured it how I wanted to on one of these days, because normally there's no other waterfall here except for this main body, and it's just going straight down. You're not even getting yeah, it's pretty wild. These are my favorite days to be on the water, and when I run workshops here, I wait until we get the rainy, stormy day, because the photos you can get are just unlike anything else. And if you come here on a clear, calm day, it's pretty, but from a photography perspective, people aren't getting the cameras out as much as you do on a day like today. So yeah, but challenging, man.
It's
real
special,
challenging.
that one. Love it.
People talk about, oh, the Sonys aren't good in the rain, mate. Like, you've seen some of the photos I've showed you, and they're still going strong. So
yeah,
every
Yeah,
camera can definitely take a bit of a beating. There's always going to be a threshold and a point where you kill it, but most cameras can get a bit of rain on them for
yeah.
sure.
You sound like you're a bit like me with your philosophy for, it's image first and worry about
Yeah.
how the gear's going to handle that later.
Yeah, I've always had that approach. Like if I really felt like it was, going to be a good image and I was just having fun, then I just go, "Oh, I'm just going to go for it here."
Yeah,
And
me
if it
too.
breaks, it breaks, and don't really put your life on the line
No.
necessarily, of course. But if it's you're going to ruin your gear, or you might fall over and graze your knee or something, then I'm happy to sacrifice a few bumps and bruises like that for sure. Back in Australia now, and this is last year, I spoke about that shot earlier where I didn't think I'd still be able to. Which one was it? Get something new. Oh, that tree, with the lone tree on the
Yep.
tree tower at
Yep.
Bermagui, and how I thought, oh man, after all these years of shooting seascapes and thinking that I'd exhausted my own creative, what I could, capture. There's always something that can be done. So this was last year back in Australia. Again, just going back to visit family and run a few workshops, and I thought, I'm gonna just point the long lens, the telephoto, for a few days at the ocean and see what I can do, because most of our seascape stuff's wide angle,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
that Cathedral Rocks one, etc. And yeah, just getting the right conditions for this type of shot, just really rewarding to go far out. You can still, you're only limited by your creativity when it comes to
Yep.
photography. People sometimes say, oh, it's all been done, or there's no point going here, blah, blah, blah. I just think you're only limiting yourself when you do that. And there's nothing wrong with doing something that's been done anyway, of course.
No, no. Well, there's some truth to it all being done, but it doesn't matter. You
Yeah,
do your own thing, do what you like.
that's it.
Yeah.
Do what makes you smile. And yeah, that was kind of the scenario here. And I just like the mixture of light, the shape in the wave, and just how the background kind of just, I know there's something
Explodes.
about this
Yeah.
one. Yeah, it just explodes, and it's got that warm light there, and it just looks like kind of, I don't know, prehistoric or something. There's something about it that I
Yeah.
just really liked here. Good fun. And this is like a 800 mil type shot,
Okay.
or something close to 800 anyway. Pretty simple photography. It's just
It is,
the
but
wave.
sometimes that's the best stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. The waves are just waiting for that right moment. Back home here in New Zealand, this is about 15-minute drive from my house. Summertime, we get the wild lupins popping
Hmm.
up in certain areas, and didn't really see the tree, but could see the river and the lupins in this field. And I had a buddy with me here, and I said to him one day, we're just doing a bit of scouting and shooting, and I was like, I want to go check out that field. I just want to have a poke around, and got down, probably about 20 minutes of walking and fluffing around, and found this tree. The sun was coming down right that moment, and just bang, just it all happened right then and there. It was meant to be a bit of a scouting trip, and it just happened to be that the conditions couldn't have been much better anyway. It just worked out really good.
Beautiful.
Had
Yeah.
no idea this tree was going to be there, and the way it all looked and everything, and just a real fun, warm afternoon. The sunsets down here in summer are like 9:30 at the peak
Sure.
of summer,
Sure.
9:45. So when I look at this shot, I just remember like, warm summer afternoon and nice and late. No one, it's all quiet. No one's around,
Beautiful.
and it's just good fun. And mate, I've being an Aussie and shooting the seascapes for so long. I remember seeing, say, Mark Adamus of
Yeah.
wildflowers in Northern America and all these shots, and I just used to be so envious of. Oh, I'd love to have foregrounds like that. Wildflowers and whatever it was, because we just don't really get it in Australia, not on that scale. So it's just so fun here in New Zealand to
Oh,
to be able to have some pretty
yeah.
vibrant, colourful flowers in your foreground. It's just easy photography, and it's just a perfect recipe. And it's hard not to have fun when you're doing it.
100%.
Um, and I think I did a focus stack here as well, so I'm actually pretty close to these lupin. Little bit of a breeze, so they're moving a touch fast as well.
Yep.
That's always a bit of a tricky one. If you're on a tripod and you're just in AV mode, for example, it might just give you a half a second exposure,
Yes.
and you're going to blur it all. So it's another reason why I teach my students to shoot manually. So if you get to a scenario where you need to freeze the movement here, then you know what to do, and yeah, just speed up the shutter
Absolutely.
speed. Might have to open the aperture up and then do a focus stack to get it all sharp and everything. But
I
yeah,
know
good fun.
a lot of photographers with this style of photography will shoot a super wide angle foreground and then focal blend it with a you know, a 35 mil or a
Yeah,
50 mil
yeah.
mid-ground background? Is that something you've had to play around with, or?
Yeah, yeah, definitely focal length blending. Haven't really crossed a shot in this series that we've shown yet, but yeah, very common because you get a wide angle 16. I've been shooting 12 mil actually. I've got the
Sure.
12 to 24 I've been playing with, and I love what it can give you in the foreground. But of course, that background, the pincushion effect,
Yeah,
it just shrinks right down. Like that Ceratore in Patagonia, for example, that stuff just shrinks right down. But we like our wide angles so we can emphasize these beautiful ice, flowers, whatever it is. So yeah, definitely do a fair bit of focal length blending. For that, I always say to people, just adhere to some kind of reality. I've seen the occasional shot where Mount Cook is suddenly
massive.
it's looking like the size of Everest, and that's just going to disappoint people when they go to these locations. And it doesn't even have to be a focal length blend; it's just your editing. If you
Yeah,
warp stuff a bit too much, people are going to travel there and go, "Where's that mountain? It doesn't look like what I'm looking at in this photo." So it's getting that right balance. But
yeah,
when I show
yeah,
people the focal length blending, it's just portraying what the eye sees. Because as you
exactly.
know, we're looking at stuff at that 50 mil type equivalent, and the wide angle lens just can't quite pick it
Well,
up.
yeah,
But
the eye has a great ability to sort of pick up on the pieces of the puzzle and then put them all together mentally so we can see the entire scene, whereas the camera
yeah,
sort of
the camera
focuses
can't.
on those smaller, well, it's just the way it is, isn't it? It's fixed to that focal length, so you can't
Yeah.
quite get the whole foreground and the dominance of a mountain in the background in the same shot. It's physically impossible for the camera to do.
And that's even what's funny about focusing as well. The eye, what we look at, hopefully anyway, is sharp. And you
Yeah.
might need to see Specsavers if it's not. But if I look at the tree's sharp, but in your peripheral vision, everything else is blurry.
Yeah.
But then when you choose to look at something, it becomes sharp. And I guess that's why with my photography, and it's pretty common in landscapes, I'm always trying to be sharp from front to back. I don't purposely have shallow depth of field and blur things out and bokeh and everything. I just want because I'm shooting landscapes and grand landscapes. If you were there in the flesh and you chose to look at something right at the bottom or right in the back, it would be sharp and you could admire the details. And I guess that's why sometimes I'm saying, yeah, I focus stacked, I did this, I did that, because it would just bug me if I wanted to admire a detail somewhere in the frame and I looked at it and it just remains soft, because
Yeah.
that's not how my eyes work in real life. So I guess that's why I kind of take that approach. And look, sometimes it's not always possible, or it's not worth the effort in the field or processing. Like even a shot like this, you might look in a corner somewhere and maybe there's a little fuzzy bit somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally that's why I'm trying to get that infinite depth of field, because I just like having that clarity all the way through. And as I mentioned, I'll haze out the background, or I'll blur the background, whatever, to a degree, but it's still in focus
Yeah.
technically. But you got to do that to show that depth, like I mentioned earlier on. Let this tree
Absolutely.
be a little bit washed out and hazed out, and things like that.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Almost time for me to shut up. We've got a couple more here.
Oh, well,
16.
yeah, I'm loving it. I'm sure everyone else at home's loving it.
Yeah,
Lots of
hopefully we
comments.
haven't
Yeah.
put anyone to sleep. This is a special place here, Mount Tudico in Fiordland, tallest mountain down here at Fiordland, 2,723 meters. And this valley, you're more or less at sea level. So when you're looking up at Tudico at 2,700 high,
Mm,
it's almost as impressive as when you're in the Mount Cook region looking at Mount Cook. Even though Cook is 1,000 kilometers taller than this guy, in the Mount Cook area, you're up higher. You're not at sea level. So what I'm getting at is the vertical relief here.
yeah.
It's almost as impressive as Cook, Ceratore in Patagonia, Fitzroy, just because of that sheer vertical relief. So to get to this location, I've hiked in here a few times. It's a good 3 hour slog one way, but it is just so wet because it's right near Milford, and the coast obviously gets a lot of rainfall. And there's a bit of a makeshift trail half the way, and then you're kind of bush bashing. And what happened on the reason why I'm including this one is, mate, that I went in with my friend, the same guy from the previous shot, my friend Federico, who was living here for a while. He right into his photography, and I'd been here a few times, but I never quite got something I was happy with. And I was like, come on, man, let me take you up the valley and, let's go in for a sunset. And you can camp up here, obviously, if you wanted to, but the goal was, let's just go in and get out. We didn't want to hike in with
Yeah.
tents and
Yeah.
food and all that. And it's 5Ks one way, and
Uh-huh.
the first 300 meters from where I parked the car, the water was already up above the ankles. So I was like, oh, great, like obviously it's good to do this one when there hasn't been too much rain in the previous days. But in Fiordland, you don't really get a choice. So I said to him, let's just put our waders on, because we both have waders. We'll just start wading from now. And that was fine. And we got in, and that allowed me to stand here in the river. This is about waist deep, where I'm kind of, as it flowed down these rocks here, it just dropped to like waist deep behind me. And that's why I like waders, because you can get in the rivers and do all that stuff. But what happened was, when we got back to the car, on the walk, the trail's covered in tree roots, and the waders are just like gumboots that just come up to your waist, essentially. And there's no padding in them like a normal hiking boot. And I basically got something called bursitis in both of my heels. And for 8 weeks, mate, I couldn't do any proper hiking. I couldn't even bend over and touch my toes without a sharp lightning bolt of pain shooting up the Achilles. I didn't know what, at first I thought I had done something to the Achilles.
Yeah.
And what it ended up being, I'm self-diagnosed it, but I believe it's bursitis. And yeah, long story short, it just really showed me how important wearing the correct footwear is. Like, I'm pretty just get out there, go barefoot, do whatever it takes to get the shot. But this one was a huge eye opener, because the feet were a bit tender after this walk.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 2 or 3 days later where I went to pick a toy up off the ground from one of the kids, and that's when it just felt like something ripped. And yeah, as it turns out, and mate, it was a pretty depressing time not being able to exercise or do anything, because the only way bursitis can go away is resting it up. And I had the Patagonia workshops coming up, and even when I got to Patagonia and shot that earlier photo that I showed you guys, I was on the border of it being healed, but not quite. And it was just, even to this day, it's still in the back of my mind when I bend over, because the pain was acute. It was just, I would scream out loud, I'd be in the house and you'd forget about it. You'd go to dust the floor or something and you go, and yell out, and terrible. But anyway, so at least I got a photo that I'm pretty happy with, because this place, you got the huge waterfall, there's just forest and beautiful, my favorite mountain, Mount Tudico, right there. The fog started rolling in, and just a fun time. The only challenge here was, on this particular day, there was a lot of sandflies. Fiordland is known for its sandflies, but sometimes they're not around. It's just hit and miss depending on the season and things like that. But this was absolutely brutal. And on my tutorials, I've got like bonus content, which is just vlogs, and I actually videoed this whole process, and the flies, trying to film, and you got these sand. You can't even get a clean shot sometimes. They're on the lens and drive you mad. I'd say most often than not, I don't struggle with sandflies, but this just happened to be one of those ones where it was. We couldn't wait to get out of there. It was like, all right, we're done. Let's just go and let's get moving. So
that can be pretty intense.
Just sums up everything I love about the place, though, with the mountains, the rivers, the trees.
Beautiful, mate. Yeah, lots of depth and layers, and gorgeous.
Good fun. Same type of thing here, just Fiordland at its finest, really, having fresh rivers with water you can just drink up, towering waterfalls. Not long after a rainstorm, so that's why the waterfalls are still there. And then just getting that light come through, bit of fresh snow up the top as well. And I just love these trees, mate. The beech trees here, they just have so much character. So for me, this is just trying to capture what I love about Fiordland in a single photo. And that's what I'm always trying. There's not one single photo of mine where I look and go, yeah, I nailed it. That I can always, for me personally, as you're probably the same, you're always aspiring to keep getting better and doing more. But this is just me getting closer and closer at those attempts at portraying the beauty of down here, and why this place is home to me. It's always felt like home, and now I've made it home. The greens in the forests, and then mountains, rivers, mate, I just get goosebumps thinking about it. I just want to go outside now. And
how do you compare it to some of the other places in the world? Iceland, Patagonia, is it as world class as those for landscape photographers?
It blows them away, mate. Iceland's cool, but it's, I don't know, it doesn't have the mountains that are the same as here. It doesn't have forest as well. So if you go to Iceland and it's raining for a week straight, you don't have many options, but maybe a few moody seascapes or something like that. Whereas here, it's just the gift that keeps on giving. It's raining, we go in the rainforest, and then we go get world-class waterfalls. if the light comes out, then even better. You get the light on everything. We even get the southern lights here, you know. So Iceland's amazing, and you know I've been there so many times now. It's great, particularly for the northern lights and just the the landscape so unique and everything. But this, in my opinion, is the world's greatest national park. It rivals. I've been to a lot of national, Yosemite, whatever, and
Hmm.
for me, the variety that you have in the South Island of New Zealand in general is just unparalleled. Patagonia is epic, but the problem there is again, if the clouds come in and block your mountains, you can't go jump in a rainforest and
Yeah.
get some world class rainforest shots. You just can't do that. So there's a few limitations. Whereas Fiordland, as a photographer and as a workshop guide, it really goes a long way. But as I mentioned, it felt like home the first time I came here in 2014. It was like I was going home and I didn't realize it. I got here and driving through and looking at it all, it was like, oh, it just spoke to me and I couldn't shake that thought. And now we ended up moving over here. And thankfully, my wife was, she was on the same page. It's been a real blessing for sure. And it's allowed me to keep being creative and growing as a photographer. Definitely. I just love it though. If anything, I just love it. Remove the camera. I just love down here, the landscapes. It just speaks to me like
Oh,
nowhere
that's
else on
great.
earth.
And when you're doing a workshop over there, is that you kind of play? I guess you have a bit of a plan, but then it's a bit loose. You change it depending on what the light's doing,
Yeah.
what the weather's doing.
Yeah, I stopped. So I do a few different workshops here, whether it's a 7 day South Island, my signature ones, which is Mount Cook and Tekapo, Oahu, Fiordland, a bit of everything. And then I'm doing like Fiordland specific stuff and private, whatever it is. But yeah, long story short, I just don't pre-plan any accommodation anymore. I don't book anything in advance because there is some places that work amazing in certain conditions, and there's some that just are not suitable whatsoever if it's raining. Say Mount Cook, it's raining. Well, there's not much you can do.
Okay.
You can try. Obviously, you can get a few different bits and pieces. But now that I live here and I'm really confident in just knowing the landscape essentially like the back of my hand, I'm just confident now to rock up on day one and meet all my clients and then be like, all right, I just love weather as
Yeah.
well. Mate, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm watching the weather like a hawk every single day, every second hour, knowing what conditions do what. So you just get to understand when the wind and the cloud and this and that. One person might read it and say, no, it's going to be rainy there. But then I could look at it or whatever, someone that knows it a bit better and say, it will clear up, trust me. And then you're going to get this scenario. And that's helped me with my success rate with photos. As a
Yeah.
landscape photographer, if you can understand weather and localize weather to where you live, your success rate's going to be so much higher, particularly if you're interested in atmosphere and things like that. So yeah, that's what I do now. And if it's raining, great, into Fiordland, get the best waterfalls you've ever seen in rainforests. And then when it clears up a bit, we'll go up to other areas. And that's kind of how I do it all now. And I enjoy that more as well because it gives me the opportunity to give the clients a far better experience because their success rate's higher.
Mm.
And I enjoy the little bit of the challenge of thinking on my feet, like, oh, which got to decide here, which way we're going to go tomorrow. If we go here, this could happen. There's a bit of a chance, I really like that. I like the pressure and everything. And when it pays off, it's just, and I do that in Iceland, actually, mate. The same thing happened in Iceland. I
Yeah.
got sick of pre-booking hotels for clients and then it's cloudy, but 4 hours away, it was a crystal clear sky.
Yeah.
So I started with the workshop, the Iceland ones, saying to people, hey, well, we're meant to be here tonight and I can't get a refund, but if you guys are happy, I'm willing to drive us to the other side of the country. We'll have to get an Airbnb or whatever to make it work, but you're going to get the Northern Lights. But if we stay here like we're meant to, you're not going to get them. And now after doing that for a few years, I just thought, it's just not worth losing money basically. So now I just don't pre-book them in
Love
Iceland.
it.
And so then it's like on day one, are we going south or are we going north?
Oh, I
And
love it.
I did that last year and the guys didn't get a single day of rain because I could just leave. All right, we're going to keep following the clear weather and get the better conditions. And once again, a bit of pressure on me, but far better experience for the guys and whatnot. And as long as people are a bit more flexible with, okay, we can't get that hotel, but we'll get in here, you're going to get better photos. And look,
Yeah.
most people are fine because they're there to get the best photos possible. And that's the result of doing it that way. So I definitely enjoy it a lot more. And that's why I keep my group sizes to 6.
Yep.
6 is, I've never gone beyond 6, and it's common for me to do workshops at 4 as well. That way it's a small private group, work with people one-on-one, and if we need to make a last minute adjustment, then it's so much easier. This one here,
Absolutely.
once again in Australia with the telephoto lens last
That's
year,
a beauty.
just saying, hey, I wonder if I can approach the landscape using a different focal length. I think this is 800 mil here. And we got a good sunrise. I was doing a one-on-one workshop with a local here, just a good guy I've known for years, and beautiful red sky. He got some awesome shots, wide angle with, really cool stuff. And then just seeing this off in the distance, a good 700-800, probably a kilometer away, thinking, hang on, if we put the long lenses on, this could be a cool shot here. And the birds is obviously just, you can't script that stuff. I was more fascinated by the breaking waves and then the atmosphere with the haze and everything. And then these birds just powered on through, and it was just perfect, mate. Like, just couldn't have, obviously. I was drawn in, there's a cross there in the middle of the
Oh,
frame,
yeah.
and that just caught my eye. And that was kind of where I was thinking could be something to base the shot around with the chaos and everything. And then as the birds come through, I was just stoked, and end up being actually sold a few prints of this one even this week, which is really
Yeah, I can see
humbled
why.
by. And I like this shot. Not many shots I have of mine where I go, yeah, I like this one, but I think I like this one. And so, just something different, and probably more that I just proved to myself that I can go back to a place that I might have shot literally 200 times and still create something that fulfills me. So it's kind of
Is
rewarding.
there a formula that you're looking for? It might be now subconscious, but is there something? Are you looking for an interesting foreground and a midground and a background, or are you looking for a subject or light or all of the above? Or
I, Most of my photography is probably spontaneous now because I do, well, not lately, but a lot of aerial work. A lot of aerials, you can get a rough idea of maps of what you want to see, but once you get in the air, you got to react to what the light's doing. Otherwise, you're not going to
yeah,
get the most bang for your buck. And that's the same with this type of shot here. A lot of it's just reactionary of going, oh, hang on, that looks interesting. Then just putting the lens to the face, and it's just more or less subconscious. Like when I'm framing this up, I'm consciously wanting to keep this off the edge because I
yep,
just find that
yeah,
as a bit of a focal point. And then I think I saw this splashing. So it's kind of just putting it to the face. And look, it's pretty much 9 times out of 10 just subconscious. The only time it really becomes conscious for me is wide angle, like say that Lupin shot, for example. When I'm using the wide angle, I'm really analyzing every corner of the frame, because the last thing you want to do is get home and go, oh, far out, I didn't realize that there was something down there,
missed
or
that bit.
oh yeah, there's a good line there that I should have included more of, whatever it is. Let's say these rocks were cutting off the edge of the frame, that would just drive me mad.
Yes,
So I'm really analyzing a lot there. I knew I wanted the crashing waves in the foreground here. That was the element, because it's adding that layer. It's another layer first and
yeah,
foremost, but it's a
yeah.
layer of drama. I wanted it to look like we're looking through the storm, essentially. So that was just the framing up and just waiting, and then finally, obviously getting all that. I think the foreground was from like exposure 2 before that or something, and it's all
Uh-huh.
shot within like a couple of seconds of each other. But this one just had the right
Gotcha.
kind of shape and movement, so I just kind of shifted that in there. But otherwise, you just can't. Too hard to try and piece all this
Oh,
together
no.
in Photoshop with that background. But yeah, it's a bit of a fusion of subconscious. Like I said, with the aerials that I do, a lot of my portfolio is aerials here, and it's just looking at the window and then going, let's try that, let's get lower, let's get higher, and then suddenly there it is. You go now, bang, 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 and then that's it. Because a plane or even a heli, particularly the planes that I use, you're going at least 130 kilometers an hour at least. So
Yeah.
you get a few frames up, and then you might have to loop back around. But that's, as I mentioned earlier, I enjoy the rush of it all. I guess I've always enjoyed getting the heart rate up a little bit, and I'm not very fulfilled if we just go stand by the calm lake with the reflection. And
Yeah.
I just want to be in a moment where I'm like, I want to feel pressure on myself, which is weird because in the moment it's kind of stressful, like, oh, I'm going to blow this. But I just enjoy it more. Maybe there's endorphins that get released. And I had a scenario like that literally a few days ago out here. going to get a shot of a location that I've been looking at for a while, and I've actually got a shot of it in the portfolio, but there's a different way I want to shoot it now. And went down the other day, fresh snow, but didn't get the light, and then went down again, and this time decided to film the whole thing as a tutorial. And then right at the last minute, because there was all fog, I'm waiting for it to burn off so we
Hmm.
can see the mountains. And then as the sun's finally got high enough to burn it off, a massive fog bow has appeared
Oh,
dead
wow.
center of my composition, like absolutely perfect. And in that moment, it's like, don't stuff this up now, like, because it was,
Yes.
especially being, I guess the handheld adds to that too. You're making sure that it's going to be sharp, and I
Yeah.
had to do an exposure blend for the foreground water, and yeah, I just remember the heart rate picking up, but that's what I live for. I live for those
Yeah.
moments where it's like, don't stuff this up, because you've got a 1 minute window here where it could be all over, but
Yeah.
they're the ones that are special to me because you can't just go back down the road
No.
and do it again. I guess that's the moments I'm kind of looking for and enjoy. And it's just a lot of it's spontaneous, just putting yourself in the right place with the right conditions coming together, like that rainbow at Cathedral Rocks, reading the weather, having a good look, and then saying, okay, now I'm going to put myself there, and then hopefully I can react to whatever happens. Because it's pretty common, you would have heard it before, people say, oh, right place, right time.
Yeah.
And that's 100% true. It is the right place at the right time. But for me to be there at the right place at the right time and then know what to do
Yeah.
is years
Yeah.
upon years of the experience. And that's what I say to my workshop guys. My job is to get you at the right place at the
Yeah.
right time, and then help you know what to do. And landscape photography is so much of that, of going out and just trying to put yourself in a position where things can align and you can create something. And of course, it doesn't always happen, but that's where you just have fun anyway. And you got to have fun in this game. You got to enjoy
Yeah.
not
Absolutely.
getting a shot. If as a landscape photographer, if you think you can go out every time and get something that you're proud of, you're going to be disappointed pretty quick. If you have a love for nature and enjoying the solitude and being in the moment, then you're going to have fun, even if you don't get a shot, even if you don't get the camera. And I'm thankful that, as I mentioned right at the start, that's what's happened with me. Photography has led me into nature more than ever before. And now nature and my time in the wilderness in particular, it blows away anything else. The photos, I couldn't care less. If I had to pick something, it would be, I don't want to lose the solitude and walking through the
Yeah.
forest and
Yeah.
everything like that. So therefore, if you go out, you try to get a shot, doesn't quite work. Oh, well, I've got outside, I've had fun, I've watched the sun come up or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then hopefully next time it might come together for you.
Yeah. Enjoy the moment, I think. Enjoy the moment first and foremost, and then try and capture what you're feeling within that
Yeah.
moment, I think.
And it's hard, like if you, I know, like especially say Sydney folk, they drive a couple of hours to get to a spot, and you get an overcast sky. And yeah, I'm not, I'm not naive. I know it's not the easiest at times,
Oh, look at
but
this. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Last one here, mate, that I've thrown in, Milford Sound again, and actually same day that other waterfall one I had where I was underneath with the
Hmm.
wide angles. Same day, I think. So just bucket 200 mil of rain in the last few hours. But the recipe here with this guy is getting the wind gust at the right time. So I've on the boat, so we're on a boat here, so many times gone past here, and maybe you get the wind gust, but the top peaks are covered by cloud.
Sure.
Or maybe we can see the peaks, but this waterfall is just calmly going down into the ocean. And this was just one of those ones. As we're approaching it, I'm yelling at my workshop guys, like, right there, like this is the shot, like trying to stress to them, like, this is incredibly rare to get all the alignment of the conditions
Oh,
here. And yeah, we had a good 5 minute seeing it, going past it, and then going along. But there was really only one or two moments where the wind just whoosh, just hit it right at the exact moment in time. And
and what do
just
you?
single exposure here,
You're in a
bang.
boat, are you?
Yeah, in a boat. So on
Oh,
Milford Sound, they've got a few boats. Some of these could probably hold 100 people or something like
yep.
that. And yeah, we're on the boat, and I've got a special boat that I like to use here, and special table and sections on the boat down the back where I've just got to dial down from a workshop perspective to give everyone really easy access and views. And we're still undercover as well.
Hmm.
So this is pouring rain, wind, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, we're just all lined up on the outside. And what's funny is the photographers, we love we're having so much fun doing this, whereas the other 90% of the passengers on the boat, they're miserable. They got their heads down. They're thinking, why did I come to Milford Sound? I knew it
Oh,
was
this
going
is
to rain.
horrible. Yeah.
And I'm always telling the locals here, and sometimes I just run into people, backpack, whatever, and I say, trust me, go tomorrow. There's a big storm, and they think I'm lying. They're like, this guy's mad.
Yeah.
And then like I said, I'll only be on these boats when it's doing this type of stuff. If it's blue sky, I just won't bother unless maybe having a family day or something like that.
Sure.
But from as far as being inspired creatively, what the weather does, for example, if tomorrow there's a lot of rain and wind, more than 100 mil of rain, I'll probably go tomorrow and try to do this, you know what I mean? Because it's just, there are so many options here. You're only limited by your own imagination. You could just zoom in and do a telephoto shot. And I'm not just
Yeah.
talking about this
No,
mountain
absolutely.
here. You've got an entire 20-kilometer fjord where we have various waterfalls and different things. Sometimes there's dolphins, whatever it is. But I just found that it's got to be in those moody, stormy days, the days where they sometimes have cancelled the cruises because the wind gusts are 250 kilometers and it's just no good. But that's what I love, mate. As I keep saying,
The
the drama.
days, the conditions
Get the
when no one's going out, mate. That's when you're
Oh,
strapping on the boots and get out
that's what,
there.
yeah. That's happened so many times. I'll be on the road, like driving into Fiordland, which is just pretty much outside the house, and people are coming out, and I'm going in, and they're probably looking at me thinking, what's this guy doing? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
now in winter, we've got the other problem where we get avalanches, and they're closing the roads off. They close it off to clear the road from snow and everything, and they're the days I'm trying to get in there to be there for the fresh snow dumps and everything. And then the road crew are closing it off. And yeah, so it helps keeping your eye on the ground with weather and knowing, okay, snow's coming this day. I've got to get in there before they close the roads off. And yeah, the weather really plays a big role in landscape photography. And for me, that's one of the frustrating parts of it. I mentioned this on Instagram the other day, is that with the other creative outlets and the other arts, and someone shut me down, a chef, but basically I said, cooking, music, painting, if you're inspired, like say you're in lockdown, right? At least those arts, you can just do your thing and get that creative outlet released. You can keep creating. Whereas landscape photography, it doesn't matter how inspired I am. I could be all pumped up. I want to get in there. If the weather and light doesn't do what you need it to do to create what you have in mind, then too bad. You just can't do it. And a lot of the shots I make are very specific on certain conditions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a chef DM me, and good reason. He said, look, yeah, you're true, but as a chef, I need to wait for these things to be in season and this. And I was like, oh, okay, I never thought about it from that perspective, like fresh produce and stuff like that. But in general, what I'm getting at is, landscape photography, that reliance, you can replace a blue sky, like I did on that other shot, but that's just such a minor factor. But when it comes to the wind, the lightning, the rainbows, I want to be experiencing the waves, the atmosphere, the proper light, the birds coming through, all that stuff. It's like, we can do a little bit in our post-processing to help finalize that image, but the bulk of it is just so reliant on nature. It's a partnership really at the end of the day, and just an ongoing it's like a marriage, mate. You have your good times, you might have a few difficult times, but as long as you're getting more good times than bad times, then you're going to have a good come out on top. Anyway, mate, it's kind of the photos I've put aside there, just a random
and
collection,
mate, when you make the best of the bad times like you do, it's all good times.
Oh, well, that's it. That's right, mate. If anything, the bad time here is the blue skies. It's just too clear. You don't want to do anything.
As you said, when those blue skies are around, you just sit back and enjoy it and breathe in the fresh air and
yeah.
take
And
it all
I
in.
think I went out here just into Fiordland not long ago. It was a private workshop. She was down for one day, so we just had to get what we were given. And she still got some amazing photos. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what, this is just so beautiful on this blue sky day, because I don't often get out there that much when it's so crystal clear and perfectly calm. And I was quite refreshed, and I was actually surprised at the stuff that I could help her achieve anyway. So yeah, there's so many things you can do, mate, that's for sure. And not just here in Fiordland and NZ, but just in landscape photography in general, whether you start looking at the more intimate scenes, macro, whatever it is, it's there's just so many things we can do, and it's a really fun, amazing art and hobby and whatever you want to call it. Love it.
Brilliant, mate. Hey, guys at home, just in the next couple of minutes, shoot some questions if you've got any questions. Steph Brian says, what an amazing morning. Please thank William for his stunning images. And I've been watching the comments as we go, mate. A couple of people have said Mate, you're the favourite photographer that's been on the show to date, so there's a big rap
Please
for you.
make me blush.
But mate, I've enjoyed it. A lot of your, although we kind of come up with rather diverse finished images in a rather different process of how we do that, a lot of your philosophy is very, very similar in the way you go about it to how I do it as well, which is interesting, very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it, man. There's so many different ways that you can approach landscape photography, whether it's in the field or what you want to do in processing, and even different techniques to get the same result. It's pretty
yeah,
common. I hear someone say, "Oh, that blah 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 on YouTube does it this way," and I'll often be like, "Sweet, like it doesn't matter how we get there. It's just whatever works for you at the end of the day." And I guess what I photograph and the techniques that I've employed, whether it's handheld or whatever it is, it's just what works for me and fulfills me and frees me up as much as, whatever. And then if someone has a different workflow and approach, or they want to put a fake rainbow and lightning, whatever it is, it's cool. Whatever. I think that's what's great about art in
guilty.
general is
Yeah.
everyone contributes their own thing, and I think as long as people are transparent and stuff, then that's probably the most important part, really, at the end of the day. But yeah,
I
thanks for having me on.
Pleasure, mate. Yeah, I think you said it well. Just please yourself. Do what you enjoy. Don't force yourself to do things just because they're going to get likes or followers or this or that. Because that you'll burn out pretty quick. I think if you force yourself to do things for those more superficial
Mm,
targets. But yeah, if you do what you love, enjoy it, have fun. And I think we can enjoy landscape photography for many, many years. I mean, I see, you might have seen this too, Will, yourself. A lot of people, they come in and they explode and they do really well for a couple of years and they just sort of fade and disappear. And I think
yeah,
generally,
burnout.
yeah, but a lot of the time I think it generally comes because they haven't really found their passion or what it is, the connection within landscape photography.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, the time we live in now with, say, social media is that can be a pretty big factor in why someone maybe got into it. Don't have specific examples, but I have seen over the years people just stop doing it and burn out because the social side of it was such a big part of it. And because you can't control the social media side and how it works and everything, then that just slowly rubs people the wrong way and they just get over it in general. But I feel like if you can, I think just you ask yourself the question, why am I picking a camera up? Why do I want to go out early in the dark? What am I trying to do here and achieve? And as I mentioned, for me, there was never an ambition to make it a career. It was, if I reflect back and put myself in that mindset, it was purely curiosity first and foremost of I'm curious what happens when I walk around this headland. Is there a tree there on a, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Or so it was that curiosity and then wanting to just do justice to what I felt and was witnessing. So I'd witness a beautiful sight and raging water and whatever. I want to do it justice. My skills aren't good enough and it's annoying me. I want to keep getting better and better purely to do justice to what I'm seeing. And then I just
absolutely.
think that helped me grow and allow me to make it a career because I was obsessed, and I still am, mate. I'm obsessed. I'm driven to do justice to the beauty, whatever it is out there. What I feel within, essentially, I just want to do justice to that. It's that feeling I get in the chest where I put myself in a moment where you're probably not going to see it again, and I just want to be able to accurately capture,
Capture it.
portray it, and then
Yeah.
share it with people. But I think if I picked it up with other ideas in mind, I wouldn't be talking to you now. I just wouldn't be here.
No, I agree with
So
that. I wouldn't.
it's
Yeah.
it's a good social thing. People, we've got groups now, Facebook groups, whatever it is, and people can meet. A lot of my friends are through photography. So there's so many positive things that can come from it, and hopefully people are inspired to just have fun. Hey, all the mistakes I've made, even as of a week ago, they just all add up to make you go that one step further the next time. So I
Yeah.
look back in the past and all the times I didn't get the shot, but I always tried to learn something along the way. Maybe I just missed the lightning storm, or maybe the foreground was blurry, or whatever it is. Over time, you start to take that on board, and then you don't have to worry so much about the technical and everything. It's all about creativity then, and
Yeah.
you're released. You're free from whatever anyone else thinks, whatever, you just do what feels right for you, and then that's probably the most satisfying position to be in. when you can just fulfill your own creative desires there. So yeah, anyway,
Yeah, I think that's
I'm rambling on, mate.
no, no, you're right. I think that's an important point as well. I think, when we first pick up the camera, it can be very foreign, and you got to spend that first 6, 12 months to get really
Yeah, you have
comfortable
to.
with it.
Yeah,
So that when you have that moment, you just go turn, twist. You're twisting things that you don't even know you're twisting, and you get the shot. When you're that comfortable, it's just an
yeah.
extension of yourself, isn't it? Really?
Intuitive after a
Yeah.
while. Yeah, and that's it. And I think, most uh, people, professionals, whoever, it doesn't matter if it's photography or what, but probably always yearning to do something better or one up themselves. I know
Yeah.
that's the case
Yeah.
for me. I can look at what's in my portfolio and yeah, I like it. And the gap between, hating it and, it's just getting more common that I like stuff now. And,
Yeah.
but there's
Yeah.
always something there I think, oh, I want to try next time, raise it up a notch.
Yeah.
And you just got to keep, and that's just enjoying it. There's no end goal, really. There just can't be in this thing.
No.
Not for me anyway. I could never do justice to particularly Fiordland, which I love with all of my being. I would never do justice to it all and explore all the places there that there's places here that people haven't even set foot before, mate. But I love the journey of trying and just giving it my best shot. And yeah, it's good. It's good fun.
Well, mate, thanks so much for being so generous with your time. Guys at home, once again, have a look in the description because to thank Will today, jump over, follow on Instagram, like on Facebook. And as I said, his tutorials are absolutely incredible. They're like jumping on a workshop with Will, following along to those landscapes. They're like literally point of view, landscape. He takes you through all the different settings, all these different philosophy, and then comes back home and works the file up, edits that file up as well. So there is a coupon code down there for that as well with the links. Well, mate, thanks again for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
No, thank you, mate. I appreciate it. And anyone who's listened along and made it this far, thank you. It really means a lot.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, guys. I'll see you back here Thursday morning, same time, 10 a.m. Sydney time. Thanks again, and bye for now. I'll just close this out, Will, and then...